Sometimes the giants are real. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, episode 95. Coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau.
What's going on, everybody?
This is going to be the Giants Part 2. This is another enormous episode on this huge topic.
I'm going to be telling some tall tales.
But first, as always, let us introduce our good friend and longhead, Mr. Brett England, the Watcher from deep beneath his secret space station in secret outer space. What's up, buddy? You got that shitty old microphone ready?
You gave me the but first, as always.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
That was my cue for space weather news. Well,
Yeah.
you are in a space station.
Yeah. This is kind of
Deep beneath
the
a space station.
And I did just recently have some weather, so
True.
Yeah.
True. We had weather out here too, so we're actually
raining tiny asteroids on you, or what?
yeah, something like that. Thunderclaps when they come together.
Meteor shower. Yeah.
Oh my!
Yeah, we're actually the podcasting days have been sort of mixed up because of the Watcher's schedule. We want to make sure that he's here, and his schedule has been really bad.
Yeah.
Keeps changing, and he's working very long hours. So we've had to move the podcast days around, and so we for a long time we podcasted every Tuesday night as much as possible. Then we moved it to Wednesday, but this week it just didn't work out, and then we needed to move it to Friday. And then when the Watcher's coming home on Friday, there's this enormous thunderstorm moving through, so we had to push it back until we're starting at like 11 o'clock. Yeah. So we should be partying on Friday night instead we're podcasting. But
We should have waited one more minute, and we would have started at 11:11.
All right. This time we're ready for the Space Weather News. Meteors. Showers from Halley's Comet. Earth is approaching a stream of debris from Halley's Comet, source of the annual Aquariid meteor shower. If forecasters are correct, the shower will peak on May 5th with as many as 40 meteors per hour. The best time to look is during the dark hours before sunrise on Sunday. Aquariids are fast, moving at 66 kilometers per second, or 148,000 miles per hour.
Wow.
And often trace long, bright paths across the sky. Set your alarm and enjoy the show.
We saw a couple last weekend.
Yeah.
Some pretty
they
long,
are
bright
long,
ones.
traily, bright things. Also, the sun is boiling. The sun has been without sunspots for 12 consecutive days, and yet the solar disk is not featureless. On April 29th, Martin R. Wise of Trenton, Florida, took a closer look. The surface of the sun is covered with convection cells, says Wise, who uses a safely filtered 200-millimeter telescope to resolve the structures. The sun is so hot it literally boils. Bumps on the boiling surface of the sun are called convection cells or granules. You can find granules in your kitchen too in a pot of hot water boiling on the stove. One difference, while the granules on your stove are only a few centimeters across, granules on the sun are as wide as Texas.
That's large. That's real big. Everybody knows it's huge. It's giant.
A sunspot is coming. For the past 2 weeks, big sunspot AR2738 has been transiting the far side of the sun. A hotspot on the sun's eastern limb today may herald its return. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory captured this image on May 3rd. You can see it coming up over.
Oh, wow. It's coming.
Yeah. The image shows the sunspot's magnetic canopy towering over the sun's horizon. The sunspot itself will soon be visible too as the sun's rotation carries it over the horizon this weekend. AR2738 has produced at least one significant coronal mass ejection while it was on the sun's far side. If a similar explosion happens next week, it could be Earth-directed. Stay tuned.
Oh, no.
From spaceweather.com, where we get all our space weather news. Really great website, guys. I want to get
Yeah,
this.
that was a great report right there. That's kind of space weather I'm talking about. Getting bombarded by rocks, very small rocks, and possibly
Texas-sized
coronal mass
granules
ejections.
boiling.
Yeah.
And possible CMEs. It's a fantastic space weather report.
Meanwhile, I got this. Oh, man. I didn't have it pulled up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. From news.yahoo.com. Scientists are wondering what they might do if we get hit by a serious rock from space.
Oh, yeah. Cool. I've seen this story.
College Park, United States, AFP. Here's a hypothetical. A telescope detects an asteroid between 100 and 300 meters in diameter, racing through our solar system at 14 kilometers per second, 57 million kilometers from Earth. Astronomers estimate a 1% risk the space rock will collide with our planet on April 27th, 2027. What should we do? It's this potentially catastrophic scenario that 300 astronomers, scientists, engineers, and emergency experts are applying their collective minds to this week in a Washington suburb, the fourth such international effort since 2013. Quote, "We have to make sure people understand this is not about Hollywood," unquote, said NASA Administrator Jim Burdenstein as he opened the 6th International Planetary Defense Conference at the University of Maryland's campus in College Park. Countries represented include China, France, Germany, Israel, Italy, Mother Russia, and the United States. The idea that the planet Earth may one day have to defend itself against an asteroid used to elicit what experts call a giggle factor. But a meteor that blew up in the atmosphere over Mother Russia on February 15th, 2013 helped put an end to the sneers. On that morning, a 65-foot, 20-meter asteroid appeared out of nowhere over the southern Urals, exploding 14 miles, 23 kilometers, above the town of Chelyabinsk, with such force that it shattered the windows of thousands of buildings. 1,000 people were injured by the shards. But the positive aspect of Chelyabinsk is that it made the public aware. It made the political decision-makers aware. Detlef Kostny, co-manager of the Planetary Defense Office of the European Space Agency, told AFP. Deflecting an asteroid. This week's exercise seeks to simulate global response to a catastrophic meteorite. The first step is aiming telescopes at the threat to precisely calculate its speed and trajectory, following rough initial estimates. Then it boils down to two choices. Try to deflect the object or evacuate.
Evacuate?
Yeah. Go to space! If it is less than 165 feet, the international consensus is to evacuate the threatened region. According to Kostny,
Oh,
yeah,
the threatened region.
It is
so we're not
possible-
talking about
No.
global killers
No,
here.
no.
Okay.
It is possible to predict the country it will strike 2 weeks ahead. Days away from impact, it can be narrowed down to within hundreds of kilometers. 2 weeks? You ain't going to get everybody out of there in 2 weeks. What about bigger objects? Trying to nuke them to smithereens like the movie Armageddon would be a bad idea because it could just create smaller but still dangerous pieces. The plan instead is to launch a device towards the asteroid to divert its trajectory, like a cosmic bumper car. NASA plans to test this idea out on a real asteroid 492 feet across in 2022 with the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, DART, mission.
Sounds like nothing can go wrong.
One issue that remains in politics, says Romana Koffler of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. Who would be the decision-making authority, she asked. The consensus was to leave this aspect out. The United Nations Security Council would likely be convened, but it's an open question as to whether rich countries would finance an operation if they themselves weren't in the sights
Oh, my God.
of large asteroid.
That sounds like crap to me.
We could use all the foreign aid to stop it.
Yeah.
Plenty of money there. Anyway, that's all I got today.
That's cool, though. I have seen that story going around. I didn't read it, but that's great. I mean, I'm glad they're just, they're even trying to look at this. So,
Yeah.
It's a simulation, guys. No asteroids will be hurt in the simulation of this asteroidal impact. You can evacuate the spot it's going to hit.
Yeah.
It's the explosion afterwards that's the problem.
Right.
And I mean, like, how do you evacuate something that, like, let's say that you've got its trajectory and you're like, okay, it's going to hit LA. It's coming in at this angle and it's going to hit, let's just say LA, right? It's going to land. It's coming
Why do you gotta pick on the left coast there, buddy?
Well, because I needed to go across the United States. I got to go
okay.
right. So it's coming in at an angle and it's going east to west and it's going to hit LA, right? And let's say it gets part of the way and explodes over Nevada.
Oh yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't predict that.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
well, you could predict it, but
You would probably be wrong. You would have to basically evacuate everything in the path while it was in the atmosphere.
it's a good point.
I mean, like, remember the Chelyabinsk thing? It comes in, it's like, and then suddenly it gets real bright, and like, there's no
Yeah.
predicting where that explosion is going to take place.
yeah, good point.
And by the way, I'm sure everybody understood this, but it was weird to me. The shards that were hurting people were not asteroid shards. They were glass
Yeah.
window shards.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
at least they're having meetings about
Right.
it.
They're right. It's the giggle factor was strong before that happened. So
The giggle factor is strong with him. With this one.
all right. So I have this cool conversation from a guy named Scott Baldwin. He was meaning to email Grimerica, but he emailed us. And it turned into a great conversation anyway, because he also listens to us. He said, "Hey guys, I'm a huge fan of your show." And remember, he's talking to Grimerica right now. "Thank you for balancing humor and information." Still talking to Grimerica. "I really enjoy you guys and I appreciate you very much. Unfortunately, will not be able to attend the conference at the cabin as I commute to China every week from Minneapolis to mix shows for a big pop star, and my dates conflict with those of your trip." And then he basically explains, he's like, "But I was listening to Randall on episode 346 today, which is the Contact at the Cabin conference that we hosted last week."
Oh, okay.
Or at the beginning of this week. 429 for those of you looking in our feed. But so I got this email and I saw episode 346 and I was like, I think he meant to talk to Grimerica, but for some reason he sent the email to us, right? But basically his idea here, which was fantastic, and I did this, he was like, I think you guys should get some powerful green lasers for Randall to use to point at stars when you're out there, right? So I did that. I went and I did a whole bunch of research and found the best 500 milliwatt green laser pointer that Randall can use to, like, if he wants to do any astronomy while we're out there. So I ordered that today for $20. Great deal. And this guy was basically saying, like, yeah, you can get them cheap, and I can get them really cheap here in China. Anyway, I replied to him and I was like, "Hey man, great suggestion. Ordered a powerful green laser pointer today. Fantastic idea. Thanks, Russ. P.S. Did you mean to email Grimerica? This is Brothers of the Serpent. Since you said episode 346, that's the reference to the Grimerica's feed, though we were the ones hosting that conference. Either way, laser pointer is a great idea." And he said, "Yes, sorry about that. Since I commute every week, I'm in full jet lag all the time. I hope you guys have a great time, and I'll be eager to listening to the podcasts that come about." Talking about Contact at the Cabin. I said, "No problem. Hope you check our podcast out sometime on your long flights." He said, "Oh, I listen and love your podcast. Episode 90 is one of my favorite Randall interviews of all time. Your knowledge of the subjects and especially your questions for Randall are so spot on. And I have you to thank for me spitting out green tea on one of my flights listening to Randall Carlson in 1 minute." Also, it is on your show that Randall debuts his conclusion that it is Lake Nipigon that was part of Ground Zero for the Younger Dryas impact. Great job on culling that out of him. Please pass on my undying respect to Randall. History will show him to be an important mind in the story of the planet. P.S. I am coming up with a list of Randall quotes that could become band names. And then he has a list here. Randall Carlson heavy metal band names. Clustered bombardment. Fragmented cometary debris. Huge loads of sediment. Massive balls of fire and gas. Isostatic depression. Sediment-laden meltwater. Cosmic deposits. The late glacial maximum. Energy paradox. Transmission electron microscopy. Cosmic ray bombardment. Carved bedrock trough. Thanks again, Scotty.
Yes.
Thanks, man. Great emails.
I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah. Too bad you were trying to talk to Grimerica. All right. This came from Keenan Switzer. It is called Cypress Hills Mystery Rocks. Hey guys, first of all, love the show. I have been working my way through all the episodes for the last few months, and sadly, I have just finished listening to every episode. You guys have created an awesome format, and the breadth of your knowledge is astounding. Anyway, I'm writing this email to share with you a mysterious site a couple hours from Calgary, Alberta. The site is called Cypress Hills Mystery Rocks. I have never been out there, but I heard about it last year, and it has intrigued me ever since. I plan to take a trip out there this summer, so if there's anything you guys are curious about in regards to the site, I would be happy to take a few more photos while I am out there. I have attached a couple of images of the site, and if you Google it, you can find a couple of articles and blogs about it. The story is that it is a natural stone formation, which may be true, but it seems odd to have so many straight lines forming in the stone. I have heard that the native people to the area claim the site was there when they arrived, and they avoid it as it is perceived as unlucky. This I heard from a friend, so it may not be reliable. I have also read about a guy who took his drone out there to get a better view of the rocks and had a lot of trouble controlling the drone, as well as having massive decrease in battery life. Anyway, just thought you guys might find it interesting. Again, thank you for all the content you have created. You are introducing people to a lot of really intriguing ideas and fighting the good fight of uncovering the true history of humanity. Hope you guys have a great week. Keep up the good work. Hi, one.
I won.
So we looked at the pictures of the site, and dude, I have to admit that looks very man-made.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah,
really cool spot. Showed that to the guys on
yeah. So we showed it
on the Zoom conference,
right, on the last conference to get their opinions, and of course, Grimerica is from Calgary. That's where they live.
Yeah.
So Graham is now talking about going out there too. So hey, man, Keenan, maybe you can meet up with old Graham.
Yeah. Rambling Graham.
He also says, looking forward to Ancient Giants Who Ruled America Part 2. So
yeah, me too.
And he also says, I started back at episode 2 again today. I figured another listen through with these ears might yield some new discoveries.
Yeah, right on, buddy.
Yeah, just nailing it. Thanks, Keenan, man. That's really cool. Really appreciate it. Okay, so here's one from Matthew Elder. These are all emails, by the way. Snake Bros! It appears there are some giant skeleton sites up here in Oklahoma, too. Here's a couple of links, and he gives some links. He's like, I don't remember giants when learning about the Spiro Mounds in Oklahoma history. I'll spare you more links as you can Google Oklahoma giant skeletons as well as I can, but there are some more. I don't mean to skirp derp and have a where are the potsherds moment, but where the hell are all these skeletons now? One! Exclamation mark, one. Looking forward to part 2. Thanks for doing such a badass podcast. Matt. So yeah, we're going to check those links out. Oklahoma's pretty close to us, so. I mean, sort of.
Yeah.
Everything is far away.
It's like
from Texas.
10 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just right outside the state.
We went to, me and the $50 Dynasty band went to Oklahoma for the Rocklahoma, like massive 80s rock multiple day concert with a buddy of ours. It was some tornadoes came in there and just wiped everything out. Just destroyed the stages and everything, dude. It was crazy. Oh man.
Okay, so you guys
and then the guy that we went with, like, stupidly he had this big RV and he mounted this massive, Texas Longhorns flag on top.
Oh, great.
And in the middle of the storm, we're all inside the RV and it's just pouring down rain. And the whole RV starts shaking. And we're like, whoa, dude, this is a crazy storm. No, it was some crazy Oklahoman guy climbing up on top of the RV and cutting our entire flagpole off the RV. And it's gone. The whole thing was gone. Not just the flag, the entire pole. And we could never find it.
He climbed up there and cut it off because
we had it zip tied to the ladder. Because
Yeah.
it's like there's this huge rivalry in football or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And the guy that we went with, he was crazy, and his nickname was the Nut, and he knew this, so he brought this massive flagpole, and we zip tied it with these heavy duty zip ties all the way up the ladder on the side of the RV, and the flag's just way up there, and in the middle of this storm, somebody climbed up on the freaking RV, cut every single one of those zip ties, took the entire flagpole. And it vanished.
Right. That guy...
He took it to the Smithsonian.
That guy wins at Capture the Flag.
That's right.
I was thinking like, he was trying to save your lives, like flags blowing and it's trying to tear the thing. And he's like, cut it down. Don't worry, guys. No, he's stealing the football flag.
That's right. Fry to pee on it and bury it.
That's fantastic.
We gave the Nut all kinds of hell about it. He was just like, you dumbass. He was so mad. We just laughed at him.
All right. So you guys remember Henry Hablack, who I read some of his emails last week. He sent a couple more, and I want to read. Okay, so he's got some big quotes from this book that he's been reading in here, and I want to read some of this. He said, "Hey, Russ and Kyle, hope you all had a great week. I sent you guys a package the other day. Let me know when you get it. Also, check out this book I've been reading this morning from this anthropologist from the mid-1850s. Here's a link." And there's no link. There's some interesting stuff in there about origin myths and other things. I quoted some relevant passages. Also, what's really interesting is this guy doesn't just dismiss Atlantis or Phoenician contact. He even describes a theory where ancient peoples from America colonized the world. I just like the fact that he's open to a range of possibilities and doesn't just dismiss everything as crazy. Anyway, some quotes. And he said, so this is from this book. Remember, it was written in the 1850s. So the Toltecs are said to have come into the country about 1,000 years before the Christian era. Their supremacy appears to have ceased and left the country broken up into small states 2 or 3 centuries before the Aztecs appeared. They were preceded by Colhuas, by whom this old civilization was originated and developed. The most ancient people, those found in the country by the Colhuas, are called the Chichimecs. They are described as a barbarous people who lived by hunting and fishing and had neither towns nor agriculture. This term, Chichimecs, appears to have been a generic appellation for all uncivilized aborigines. Brasseur de Bourbourg says, under the generic name Chichimecs, which has much embarrassed some writers, the Mexican traditions include the entire aboriginal population of the New World, and especially the people by whom it was first occupied at the beginning of time. Right. Let's see. I'm going to skip some of this. There's a whole bunch of stuff. He's got myths in here. Anyway, Henry says, this one's really good. He quotes also, this is from the book, another authority which, quote, cannot be suspected, unquote, namely M. Charles Martins, who said in the Revue des Deux Mondes for March 1st, 1867, now, hydrography, geology, and botany agree in teaching us that the Azores, the Canaries, and Madeira are the remnants of a great continent which formerly united Europe to North America. Unquote. He could have added other quotations to the same strain. Those geologists who believe that our continents have long remained in nearly the same relative position would probably give the supposed change a much greater antiquity than Brasseur de Bourbourg would be likely to accept. And the geological uniformitarians would deny with emphasis that so great a change in the shape of a continent was ever effected by such means or with such rapidity as he supposes. But the latest and most advanced school of geological speculation does not exclude catastrophism and therefore will not deny the possibility of sudden and great changes by this method. Doubtless the antiquity of the human race is much greater than is usually assumed by those views of the past and which are still regulated by the medieval systems of chronology. Archaeology and linguistic science, not to speak here of geology, make it certain that the period between the beginning of the human race and the birth of Christ would be more accurately stated if the centuries counted in the longest estimate of the rabbinical chronology should be changed to millennia. So instead of the centuries, change those to millennia, which is, it's correct at this point. We know that anatomically modern humans have been around for 300,000 years.
Yeah.
And they represent also another fact, namely that the antiquity of civilization is very great, and suggest that in remote ages it may have existed with important developments in regions of the earth now described as barbarous and even as Brasseur de Bourbourg supposes on ancient continents or portions of continents now out of sight below the surface of the oceans. The representation of some speculators that the condition of the human race since its first appearance on Earth has been a condition of universal and hopeless savagery down to a comparatively modern date is an assumption merely, an unwarranted assumption used in support of an unprovable theory of man's origin. Its use in the name of science by advocates of this theory, like the theory itself, shows that the constructive power of fancy and imagination will sometimes supersede everything else and substitute its ingenious constructions for legitimate conclusions, even in scientific speculation.
That's great.
Great book. Yeah.
How old is that?
From the 1850s, he said.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's one more.
There's a lot of, schools of thought that went by the wayside.
Yeah.
We don't, it was gone before we were around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our parents, so we have a coworker at work he's from Mexico, coworker and friend.
Yeah. Really
name
cool
is
guy.
Raul, and he's in his 50s. And after we did the first episode of the Giants, I was just thinking like, man, these stories were all the way up into the
1950s.
Yeah.
At least. Yeah.
So I just asked him one day, we were like cruising in the Gator or whatever. And I was like, so do you ever remember, or no, we were in my car.
Yeah. We're coming back from the training at the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I asked him like, do you remember when you were like a boy, in Mexico, like hearing stories about like really large human skeletons being found and uncovered and stuff, like 7-8 foot, and he was like, oh yeah, oh yeah. It's like, really?
Awesome.
Yeah. He's just like, yeah, straight up, like
Yeah,
they were,
oh, yeah.
lots. They were fine, like
Yeah.
when he was
They're
a
all
kid.
in Mexico. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
So this whole thing is just, the conspiracy is crazy.
yeah.
Like
Teotihuacan was said to be the city of giants. I mean, it was built, that was in the area that the natives there call the land of the giants. They were afraid of
Yeah.
it. The whole Mexico City area is the land of the giants. So,
yeah.
and I remember reading crazy stories of like, geologists and surveyors, and especially in, I think in the Mexican state of Chihuahua, they were up in the mountains and there were caves, and one guy had gone in, like he realized that he was going to be stuck away from his, he was going to be stuck out in the wilderness till the next day.
Yeah.
And he was like looking for a good place to camp, and he found a sort of an overhang, and he saw that it had a cave entrance in the back of it. Once he got into the overhang, he could see in the shadow that there was actually a cave mouth, and he was like, okay, this is a good place. And he went in there, and there was a big cavern in there, and he said there were like 8 big, what he thought were boulders, sort of like placed around in there, and he just kind of like made his bed on the floor. It was dark. He made his bed on the floor and passed out. And when he woke up, they were sitting corpses, like mummified
Yeah.
giants. Yeah. Can you imagine that? Like, you're like, oh, look at these giant rocks. And you go to sleep and you wake up like, ah! It's just surrounded by giant mummies.
Yeah. It's that's what's so great about this guy's book that we've been going through.
Yeah.
That he did all this work to compile all of these news stories. And you can find, individual ones and stuff, but to just like, for me, I was doing searches trying to find, credible accounts of giant skeletons or large skeletons being uncovered or discovered in Mexico. God, the stuff that comes up is just, you can tell it's like total sensationalism. Like it's all, there's just so much crap on it. It's almost like trolls.
Right. Yep. Zoot Suit Giants.
We really got to make that song.
I mean, I have to say, like, that story may be true, but it sounds like sensational made up bullshit.
Yeah.
I just had to read it because, Zoot Suit Giants. It's just freaking awesome. That's freaking awesome. All right, so I got one more thing to read here from Henry. He sent me a whole bunch. I can't go through all of it because it's too much, but this part is cool. He says, this is on the third email of this series of where he's quoting this book at length. He says, sorry for the massive paragraphs, but you're going to want to read the rest of that last quote. So, from the book, this refers to discoveries made on the coast of Ecuador in 1860 by James S. Wilson, Esquire. At various points along this coast, he found ancient or fossil pottery, vessels and images, and other manufactured articles, all finely wrought. Some of these articles were made of gold, The most remarkable fact connected with them is they were taken from a stratum of ancient surface Earth, so paleo surface, which was covered with a marine deposit, 6 feet thick. The geological formation where these remains were found is reported to be as old as the drift strata of Europe and identical with that of Guayaquil, in which bones of the mastodon are met with. The ancient surface earth, or vegetable mold, with its pottery, goldwork, and other relics of civilized human life, was therefore below the sea when that marine deposit was spread over it. This land, after being occupied by men, had subsided and settled below the ocean, remained there long enough to accumulate the marine deposit, and again was elevated to its former position above the sea level. Since this elevation, forests have been established over it, which are older than the Spanish conquest, and now it is once more subsiding. In 1862, at a meeting of the Royal Geological Society, Sir Roderick Murchison spoke of these discoveries as follows. The discoveries Mr. Wilson has made of the existence of the works of man in a stratum of mold beneath the sea level and covered by several feet of clay, the phenomenon being persistent for 60 miles, are of the highest interest to physical geographers and geologists. The facts seem to demonstrate that within the human period, the lands on the west coast of the equatorial America were depressed and submerged, and after that accumulation of marine clays above the terrestrial relics, the whole coast was elevated to its present position. Assuming the facts to be as Mr. Wilson reports, and they have not been called into question, it follows that there was a human civilization to a certain extent in South America at the time of the older Stone Age of Western Europe. The oldest Peruvian date of Montesinos is quite modern compared with this. The fact may be considered in connection with another mentioned in the section on American ethnology, namely that the most ancient fauna on this continent, man probably included, is that in South America. But without regard to what may be signified by these discoveries of Mr. Wilson, there is good reason for believing that the Peruvian civilization was much more ancient than it has been the fashion to admit. Great stuff.
Yeah. All right.
As always, Henry, thank you so much, man. We got a one-up box?
Oh, yeah. All right, let's put on our masks. It's unlabeled. Make sure it's not anthrax.
Says Snake Bros.
Snake Bros from the CIA.
From the Smithsonian.
Yeah. It's not big enough.
Oh, anyway, don't these things have a...
Just cut it.
All right.
Just don't cut yourself.
These things have a... Yeah.
Oh, whoa, you almost stabbed
Sorry.
me in the eye with it. It's a book.
Whoa.
Dude, that's awesome.
That's it. That's the book that he's been referencing.
Oh, my God.
Ancient Monuments of the Mississippi Valley. So we don't know who this is from because it doesn't say.
Oh, my God. This is a huge book.
Yeah. That's the book that's referenced so many times in these giant stories. Here, let me get
Smithsonian Classics?
So it's, Ancient Monuments of the Mississippi Valley by Ephraim G. Squire and Edwin H. Davis. Smithsonian Classics of Anthropology. On the back, it says, early in the 19th century, as wagon trains streamed into the lowlands of Ohio and the Mississippi valleys, settlers came upon vast numbers of abandoned mounds and earthworks that they attributed to a sophisticated race of mound builders who long ago had disappeared. Giving rise to often loaded questions about human origins, the mounds and the artifacts they contained became the focus of early American efforts towards the science of archaeology. Published in 1848 as the first major work in the nascent discipline, as well as the first publication of the newly established Smithsonian Institution, Ancient Monuments of the Mississippi Valley remains today not only a key document in the history of American archaeology, but also the primary source of information on hundreds of mounds and earthworks in the eastern United States, most of which have now vanished. While adhering to the popular assumption that the mound builders could not have been the ancestors of the supposedly savage Native American group still living in the region, the authors set high standards for their time. Their work provides insight into some of the conceptual, methodological, and substantive issues that archaeologists still confront. long out of print, this 150th anniversary edition includes David J. Metzler's lively introduction, which describes the controversies surrounding the book's initial publication, from a bitter, decades-long feud between Squire and Davis to widespread debates about the links between race, religion, and human origins, complete with a new index and bibliography and illustrated with the original maps, plates, and engravings. Ancient Monuments of the Mississippi Valley provides a new generation with a first-hand view of this pioneer era in American archaeology.
Oh man, whoever you are, thank you.
So this was either Henry or I think maybe Patrick. Both of them said that they were going to.
This book is
enormous,
beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do like Darren. I'm gonna go through the book and look at all the pictures first. That's great, dude. This is awesome. All right. Thanks a lot.
Yep, it's going in the Snake Bros library.
Snake Bros library. We got a great collection going on here.
Yep. Thank you,
giant collection.
Thank you guys so much for the emails and the one-up boxes, presents. We love it. You got any? By the way, were there any pyramid scheme?
Nope.
Comments? Okay.
Thanks anyway.
Yep. All right. We will take a break and we'll be right back.
Darkened corners and shadowy recesses of the deep web, brothers of the Serpent slither out into the night. I want to start this part 2 with a little piece here from Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, yeah.
And this is an introduction. This is from the Lincoln Institute.wordpress.com. The Abraham Lincoln Institute for the Study of Leadership and Public Policy at Lincoln Memorial University. Lincoln at Niagara Falls. In the autumn of 1848, Abraham Lincoln campaigned for Whig presidential candidate Zachary Taylor in Massachusetts. On the way home to Illinois, he visited Niagara Falls and found the site so impressive that he started writing about it. His unfinished meditation on the falls probably dates from the end of September. And it quotes him here. It calls up the indefinite past. When Columbus first sought this continent, when Christ suffered on the cross, when Moses led Israel through the Red Sea, nay, even when Adam first came from the hand of his Maker, then as now, Niagara was roaring here. The eyes of that species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now. Contemporary with the whole race of men and older than the first man, Niagara is strong and fresh today as 10,000 years ago.
Wow.
The mammoth and mastodon, now so long dead, that fragments of their monstrous bones alone testify that they ever lived, have gazed on Niagara. So that guy was a snake bro. And there's, you can find this easily.
Yeah.
And he actually was an enthusiast of the Native American mounds, and he toured. Yeah, he was all through there. And he's from Illinois.
Amateur antiquarian.
Yeah, he was from Illinois, which is where Cahokia is. So he was really into that stuff. But you can find online, there's these people that are like, no, he's talking about mammoths. The eyes of that species of giant whose bones fill the mounds of America.
Right.
Mammoth bones do not fill the mounds of America.
Right.
But they're trying to say that he was only talking about mammoths.
Because he mentions mammoths later?
Right, because he mentions mammoths after that. But he was right on. Like, he's talking about, 12,000 years ago,
right.
10,000 years ago with the mammoths and the giants.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Was prescient.
Really cool. So, yeah, when I first heard that, I was like, what? I have to check that. And sure enough, yeah, it's there. He never actually gave the speech. He was preparing it, but he never gave it. It's in his, notebook or diary or whatever.
Yeah. So now it's in the Lincoln archives.
That's right.
Right.
No one, not even the Smithsonian, can destroy that. So that's really cool. So I went back through the whole book again.
Yeah, I went through it again too.
The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America.
Part 2.
So I wanted to go through a couple of parts here. I have some bookmarks, and I'm not as fast as Russ, so bear with me. But these are just short little blurbs, and it's hard for me to tell what newspaper article they were coming from.
I understand. The book is...
But these are just, I'm going to go through a couple of these, and this is about the basic idea and the premise that the natives, the people who are interacting with the Indians, the colonists and the settlers who are interacting with the Indians, and the first people that came here from Europe that interacted with the Indians, questioned them about these mounds, right?
Yeah.
And there's this, and then even later, as we learned more and more about the Indians and we started finding out more about their oral tradition, there is nothing. There either is nothing that says anything about the mounds, or they say we didn't build those.
Right.
So, Indians have no oral traditions regarding the mounds. Mounds such as the ones uncovered in Ohio are not rarities to the scientist. They were known to the earliest settlers, but no Indian tradition has ever accounted for them.
Yeah.
So it's just a little blurb. Go to the next one.
And even the ones that do, while he's looking that up, even the ones that do are accounted for are usually, like you can see, they're usually layered burials, and it's the top layers that have what are more obviously more modern, definite ancestors of what we think of now as Native American tribes.
Yeah.
When you get down to all the way to the bottom and you're uncovering 2 giant skeletons, those guys aren't. Or if they are, they're very ancient.
Yeah.
So
another one. No tradition for the mounds among the Sioux. Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Sioux.
yeah.
It is evident that the handiwork of the builders of these mounds dates far back into the history of the West, as the Sioux Indians have known the soil for 300 years, and they have no traditions concerning mound building within that range of time.
Yeah.
This one.
The claims are different now, obviously.
Yeah. Let's see.
So it's interesting to look back and see, when people are looking at their oral traditions earlier and seeing that they weren't claiming to have built the mounds at the time, or some of them weren't.
The giants cleared the forest. This is cool.
Yeah.
The claims of the local Indians of Pennsylvania that they did not clear the wide swaths of forest in the area echo the claims of other Indian tribes across the United States, who also claim no part in the construction of the ancient earthworks found in their tribal domains. The local Indians claimed that giants were responsible for the clearing of forest land, and construction of huge earthworks is echoed throughout the United States by widely separated, unrelated Indian tribes. So, another one. This is a excerpt from History of Crawford County, Pennsylvania, 1850. When first visited by the whites in the valley of French Creek were old meadows, destitute of trees and covered by long wild grass and herbage resembling the prairies, by whom these lands were originally cleared, will probably forever remain a matter of uncertainty. The Indians alleged that the work had not been done by them. A tradition among them attributed it to a larger and more powerful race of inhabitants who had preoccupied the country.
Oh, yeah.
So
They weren't agricultural in general, basically.
So, Yeah, and then the Cahokia site, that's the other one I wanted to check out. That place, I got to go there.
Yeah.
I got to go there. This is an account from a guy who, I guess like a settler guy who wrote about it in his diary. Did you read this last time?
No. I just remember it from the book, yeah.
Journal of a Voyage Up the Mississippi River in 1811 by Henry Marie Brackenridge. When I reached the foot of the principal mound, and so the guy gives a little bit of context. He's talking about how he's making his way through the woods along Cahokia Creek, and he passed over the plain to the mounds. And this is cool. He referred to them as resembling enormous haystacks scattered through a meadow.
Yeah.
You know, not hay bales, but stacks.
Yeah.
You know, big because they're covered in grass.
Right. Pyramids.
He says, when I reached the foot of the principal mound, I was struck with a degree of astonishment not unlike that which is experienced in contemplating the Egyptian pyramids. What a stupendous pile of earth! To heap up such a mass must have required years and labors of thousands. Pursuing my walk along the bank of Cahokia, I passed 8 other mounds in the distance of 3 miles before I arrived at the largest assemblage. When I reached the foot of the principal mound, I was struck with a degree of astonishment not unlike that which is experienced in contemplating the Egyptian pyramids. What? It's repeating it twice.
That's all right. Keep going.
Hold on. It stands immediately on the banks of Cahokia, and on the side next to it is covered with lofty trees. Were it not for the regularity and design it manifests, the circumstances of it being on alluvial ground and other mounds scattered around it, we would scarcely believe it be the work of human hands.
That's Monk's Mound, right? The huge one? Yeah.
Yeah. That's weird how it actually completely repeats that whole first.
Well, it's just like, he says it twice. It's like the pyramids, bro. I looked at it, it's so huge, it's like the pyramids.
But yeah, I just thought that's the one that the base is larger than the
it's
the
like
base
19
of the Great
acres
Pyramid.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Good grief.
It's crazy. And this is the one other little blurb. I thought this was cool. The Old People. You remember that one?
The Old People.
Yeah. This is from German book from 1857, talks of the ancient miners. In the following newspaper article, reporter Victor F. Limmer talks about a German book called, in German, Travels in Northwestern Parts of the United States, is the English translation, with chapters relating to the ancient miners, or, quote, old people, unquote, who legend says were the original miners of the copper in this area. It is interesting to note that the term old people is a cognate of Anasazi, ancient ones.
Yeah.
Which refers to the original builders of the cliff dwellings in the southwestern United States.
Yeah.
So, the Anasazi.
Yeah.
Dude. The old people. So.
I heard those were built by the old people. All right. I've got some here. This one is a giant race, the Indian mound Chickasaw. Human skeletons 8 and 10 feet in height, relics of a former race, from the Evening Telegraph, September 15th, from 1870. 2 miles west of Barfield Point in Arkansas County, Arkansas, on the east bank of the lovely stream called Pemiscot River, stands an Indian mound some 25 feet high and about an acre in area at the top.
Wow.
The mound derives its name from Chickasaw, a chief of the Shawnee tribe who lived, died, and was buried there. This chief was one of the last race of hunters who lived in that beautiful region and who once peopled it quite thickly. Aunt Kitty Williams, who now resides there, relates that Chickasaw would frequently bring in for sale as much as 20 gallons of pure honey in deerskin bags slung to his back. Carrying 20 gallons is a lot, right? He was always a friend to the whites, a man of gigantic stature and Herculean strength. He was buried at the foot of the mound on which he had lived by his tribe, most of whom departed for the nation immediately after performing his funeral rites. Chickasaw was perfectly honest and the best informed chief of his tribe. A number of years ago, making an excavation into or near the foot of Chickasaw's mound, a portion of a gigantic human skeleton was found. The men who were digging, becoming interested, unearthed the entire skeleton, and from the measurements given to us by reliable parties, the frame of the man to whom it belonged could not have been less than 8 or 9 feet in height. Under the skull, which slipped easily over the head of our informant, who we will here state is one of our best citizens, was found a peculiarly shaped earthen jar, resembling nothing in the way of Indian pottery, which has before been seen by them. It was exactly the shape of the round-bodied, long-necked carafes or water decanters, a specimen of which may be seen on Gaston's dining table.
Gaston!
The material of which the vase was made was of a peculiar kind of clay, and the workmanship was very fine. The belly or body of it was ornamented with figures or hieroglyphs consisting of a correct delineation of human hands parallel to each other, open, palms outward, and running up and down the vase, the wrists towards the base and the fingers towards the neck. Since that time, wherever an excavation has been made in the Chickasaw County, in the neighborhood of the mound, similar skeletons have been found, and under the skull of every one were found similar funeral vases, almost exactly like the one described. There are now in this city several of the vases and portions of the huge skeletons. One of the editors of the Appeal yesterday measured a thigh bone, which is fully 3 feet long. The thigh and shin bones, together with the bones of the foot, stood up in a proper position in a physician's office in this city, measured 5 feet in height, and show the body, to which the leg belonged, to have been from 9 to 10 feet in height. At Beaufort's Landing and near Barfield, in digging a deep ditch, a skeleton was dug up, the leg of which measured between 5 and 6 feet in length, and other bones in proportion. In a very few days, we hope to be able to lay before our readers accurate measurement and descriptions of the portions of skeletons now in the city and of the artifacts found in these graves. It is not a matter of doubt now that these human remains, but of a long extinct race. So one of the things I like about this one is how they start out explaining that Chickasaw himself, who was there in memory of the settlers, right, was an enormous guy.
Yeah.
He was a giant. He carried 20 gallons of honey on his back when he came up there. He was just really strong and huge, right? And then he was buried at the foot of the mountain by his tribe, who then left for, quote unquote, the nation, whatever their reservation was. And apparently the whole town loved him. You know, the way they refer to him in this, that he was perfectly honest, that he was incredibly intelligent, and so on and so forth. So I find that interesting because you're getting the idea that he was the last remnants of of this genetic heritage, and he was still ruling the tribe. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. I remember like some other story, I think we might have talked about it, that I found where it was something about the settlers had come in, and then like they went, like they'd met with the natives, and then they were like, oh, you got to go like meet our chief or whatever, and they go off there and get him, and he's just like this massive freaking dude. They're like, what?
I think what's his name? One of the Mayflower guys, the chief that they interacted with, was enormous.
Yeah,
and it's in his
maybe
diaries.
that's what it is.
William, what's his name? Yeah.
Drawing a blank.
But anyway, in his diaries, he talks about the chief of the tribe that they were dealing with, the Plymouth Rock people or whatever. The Plymouth Rock settlers were dealing with this chief, and he was said to be 8 or 9 feet tall. Absolutely enormous, perfect in proportion and feature, and very friendly and nice and very smart and so on and so forth. So.
Yeah.
All right.
So I got this one other one that's...
Yeah, go ahead.
This is just weird. This is out of Tennessee, the Many Mounds of Tennessee. And the author is talking about, he's been quoting from this guy's Haywood's book. He says, I have already included excerpts detailing some of the amazing accounts in Dr. John Haywood's wonderful book from 1823, The Natural and Aboriginal History of Tennessee. Perhaps the most amazing finds described in the book were the tiny mounds that contained caskets of 3-foot-tall, moon-eyed children, who were pygmies that were said to accompany the giants. The 3-foot-tall pygmies were originally said to have come from North Carolina, and legends say they were mischievous and only like to come out at night. Comparisons with leprechauns immediately come to mind reading this. Cherokee lore recounts that they waged war against these moon-eyed people and drove them from their home in Hiwassee, a village in what is now Murphy, North Carolina, pushing them west into Tennessee. In addition to numerous giants and pygmies, Haywood discovered grave goods, including bloody axes, a stone trumpet hunting horn, carved mastodon bones, and soapstone statues and pipes. Anyway, he goes on to tell more
Carved
about
mastodon bones.
that. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's pygmies, dude.
Yeah.
The moon-eyed people.
I didn't know the moon-eyed people were pygmies. That's cool.
Mischievous. Coming out at night.
William Bradford. That's who
There
it
it
was.
is.
Thanks, Watcher.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
it.
Appreciate that, Watcher.
So the giants ran around with little 3-foot tall guys that came out at night and played jokes on people. That's just crazy.
Squanto was the giant. Yeah. The giants are out in the woods and then...
Yeah. 3 darts is too much.
Okay, so my next one's at 2:45. So go ahead.
Yeah, you're good. I had one marked for the Mica,
Yeah.
all the Mica stuff that they found. And there was this one really weird thing that he was quoting. I can't find it. Okay, I went to the page that I had bookmarked and it's not in there. So I must have
But one of the wrong one?
yeah.
Okay.
But I remember it well enough. I don't have to read it. Basically, in one of these articles that he's talking about, or it was a book that he was, quoting from, where the guy was talking about all of these artifacts that he was finding in these excavations or whatever. He was an archaeologist,
Yeah.
and he was finding these, all this mica or whatever, and they were correlating it to the mica mines that were nearby or whatever. But when he was explaining the mica that he was finding, he was saying it brings to mind the mica found in between the courses of the pyramids in Mexico.
Oh, yeah. Like it's from Brazil.
So I never realized that, because I'd heard that there were sheets of mica found when they were digging into when they were excavating to the pyramid, because the pyramid in Mexico that was completely covered in earth and jungle and whatever, and they're like digging into it, and they were just like actually going past the actual exterior of the pyramid and pulling out rock or whatever. And they took off with all these sheets of mica, but I'd never heard it described as being between the courses of stone. But that's the way it was described in this dude's book.
Yeah. What do you mean? What's the difference?
Like the difference being, I imagined it being like sheets of mica on the outside or sheets of mica on the interior chambers or whatever underneath.
No, yeah, it was always couldn't see it.
It was in between the courses of stone.
Yes.
Which is like,
why would you
once
even do
again, electrical.
Right.
Like, think about it, because mica is like one of the best insulators
that? Right.
ever.
Right. And the main thing about that was that, even if you're not thinking electrical, you have to say why, because mica is a beautiful substance. But if you're hiding it underneath a course of stone, then what's the point?
Yeah, it's got to be...
Right. It
there's
has to
gotta
have
be
some other purpose.
Utilitarian.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was cool. It's like if you're stacking up these courses of stone, but in between each course, you're putting sheets of mica down.
Yeah.
You're creating this
giant capacitor.
Exactly. It's like they were, this whole idea that pyramids create this energy flow towards the precipice
They're
or whatever.
pulling it from the telluric current somehow or whatever. Yeah.
Like that's a brilliant way to design it, I guess. I don't know. It's like, it seems like, there's more to this. There's something going on there.
Yeah.
In between the courses of stone. I just never heard that before.
And at the Mica pyramid today, the mica still exists. On the interior, it's beneath the floor.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was these sheets that were on the interior chambers. I never realized it was like built into the structure.
Yeah. But in the Mica pyramid, I know that at least that they're beneath the floor stones, so you can't see it.
Yeah, this is in, I think, Teotihuacan.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So this next one I have is the measuring stone. and stuff about brain surgery. So it's a measuring stone. Regarding the next in importance to the tablet is the measuring stone. This is a piece of sandstone about exactly 9 inches on the flat side and 12 inches on the curve. The dotted lines in the drawing indicate the completed ellipse, which is an exact model of the mound in which it was found. Learned mathematical analysis shows this stone to have been the basis for all measurements of the great mounds and earthworks in the Ohio Valley.
Yeah.
And that the same numbers, 9 and 12, are the key numbers of the measures used in the construction of the architectural works of the Chaldeans, Babylonians, pre-Semites, and Egyptians, while the latter number remains to this day the English standard. Evidence of brain surgery. The skull taken from an excavation near Cincinnati shows that these people were well versed in surgery. It is the skull of a man who had once received a terrible blow to the side of the head, which crushed the skull. But after careful treatment, he recovered from the effects of the blow. Dr. Langdon, an eminent surgeon of Cincinnati, examined the skull and said that the adjustments to the parts of the bones and the way in which they had healed show knowledge of practical surgery scarcely excelled the present day.
Yeah.
Or scarcely was excelled by the present day, basically. In other words, that whoever fixed that guy's broken skull did just as good of a job as, or almost as good of a job as what this doctor was saying that they acknowledged at the time, which I don't know what that was, probably.
Probably late 1800s. Or...
Yeah, 1841. Yeah, so let me back up and do this tablet. So it's called the Sensational Cincinnati Tablet. Similar to the textile and its ancient connections to advanced civilization are 2 other relics in the possession of the society. One known as this is the Society of, I think it's the Anthropological Society or whatever of Cincinnati. One known as the Conjuring Stone and the other as the Tablet of Life, or more commonly the Cincinnati Tablet, because it was taken from one of the mounds marking the site of the city. The former a mathematical and the other a psychological witness. The tablet is a remarkable and curious stone. Two others of similar hieroglyphical decoration, but plainly of less advanced philosophical idea, according to the learned men who examined them, have been found in Ohio mounds, one near Wilmington and the other one near Waverly. And not only does the Cincinnati tablet exhibit a more advanced idea, it is also of superior workmanship and preservation. An examination of the drawing of the Cincinnati tablet will discover upon it several fetal designs that have been interpreted as symbolical of those gestative and procreative mysteries that must have powerfully affected the minds of man in the remotest early ages. The design of the tablet shows that its author had knowledge of the stages of development at various periods of fetal growth, and the tablet bearing these symbolizations of the existence before life was no doubt used in connection with the ceremonies of sepulture and possibly by way of comparative conjecture concerning the hidden things of life beyond the grave. So the birth of life and the birth of the spirit, you know, and comparing that into death.
Yeah.
So forges polishing bones and iron. The relics in the Museum of the Cincinnati Society also show that these people were well versed in the industrial arts, there being the remains of hammers, knives, mica ornaments, beads, wampum, decorated shells, pottery, and many other things. Among these are some that have puzzled the scientists to determine what use they have been applied, such as a certain leg bone. It is a femur almost worn in two by some friction, as though it must have been used for polishing. Thousands of pieces of these bones have been found, having been so worn away that they broke in use. There is also a kind of needle made from long fish bones resembling the length in the present croquet needle and the carpet needle in construction. They may have been used in the making of clothing. There are also found the remains of forges and great quantities of furnace slag and cinders and scaling like those that fly from beaten white-hot iron.
That's freaking awesome.
I mean, blacksmithing is not something that the...
So when they were... there's a part in the book when he's talking about the way they think that they worked the copper, because there's all these copper mines, right? He gets into the copper mines, the Michigan mines or whatever, and then there's all the stuff that they find in the mounds all throughout, and there's so much copper. So the idea is that they had this method of annealing, which is working the copper without heat. They're not, or annealing, I guess, is just hammering on it until you just keep hammering on it and it gets hard.
Isn't it a way of welding it? Maybe?
Yeah, welding the pieces together.
Yeah. Something like that. Maybe. I don't know. I thought I looked this up, but I can't remember if I looked it up. Watcher, what's annealing? ANNEALING.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could be wrong, but anyway, one of the methods that they used, maybe that's not the right word for it, but was that they hammered on it for so long that it just got hard. So like the way that works is naturally the crystalline structure is all the lattices in the crystal are lined up naturally, and therefore they easily bend or can slip along, various axes that the atoms line up. But if you beat it and you keep bending it, and it's like, imagine it like if you could knead it like dough.
Yeah.
When you start pushing it around and smushing it and flattening it and then smushing it the other way, you're changing all of the directions of those crystalline lattices to where none of them are facing in the same direction. So they're all mixed up and facing in different directions, which makes it hard because it doesn't, now the crystal lattices can't slip along similar aligned axes.
Right.
So they figured this out, right? And the idea was that, you could eventually figure it out. Like you get the metal and you try to use it and it bends. And so then you straighten it out and then it doesn't bend as easy. And then you straighten it out again. And then it's still, it's like, I don't know. They're trying to figure out or come up with these ideas of how they could have figured out
by accident.
Right.
By trial and error.
Heating it in the fire and then cooling it off and figuring out that
tempers it.
That tempers it. So some of the artifacts that they found had like incredibly hard tips, like the spear tips or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're just like,
how do they
that's
do
so freaking hard.
Yeah.
Like, how do they do it?
Yeah. And normally when you harden copper like that, it becomes brittle. Right?
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that's what they always talk about, is that these ancient peoples had a way of doing it that made it not only harder than we can today, but that it wasn't brittle. Like Christopher Dunn talks about how, like, he's like, look, you can harden a copper chisel, right?
Yeah.
But the more you harden it, the more brittle it becomes, and
Right.
it becomes apt to shatter like glass.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
But that's the way we temper it. But some of these ancient artifacts people kept saying that they had some way of hardening them that did not make them fragile, and it was actually harder than what we would make today through our process of tempering.
Yep. All right, what's he saying?
So, okay, one thing he says here about the brain surgery, he says removal of the pieces of brain could safely, so the removal of the pieces of the skull so the brain could safely swell without damaging itself, and then putting it back in a way that would heal is high level. Yeah. That's hard to do without killing the person, right? And then he's talking about annealing is you want heat, metal, or glass, and allow it to cool slowly in order to remove internal stresses and toughen it. That's annealing.
Okay. I thought that was tempering, but...
Well, tempering, I think, is cooling it fast.
Okay.
Annealing is cooling it slowly. Maybe?
I don't know.
Come on, Watcher.
Anyway.
Yeah, so tempering is specifically heating, then fast cooling to harden it.
Yeah.
Annealing is heating it and then allowing it to cool slowly.
Got all that wrong. Anyway, they did hammer on it a lot. Like there was one method that they used. They didn't use heat. They just hammered on it. And like I'm trying to imagine hammering on copper with a stone until it gets hard, right?
Og smash. Bang, 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 bang.
It's like,
bang, bang,
yeah,
bang,
you could.
bang.
I don't know. I'm just like, wouldn't like pieces of the stone, sand chunks and stuff getting embedded in there, and just like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, they were good at it. They were really good at it.
Yeah, and he says you can bind pieces together when you anneal. So that's what I thought it was a way of welding the copper together.
Okay. Yeah, that's what you get for listening to an audiobook while working, thinking you know what's going on.
Okay. Remains of a 9-foot giant in Ohio, Cincinnati Enquirer, July 14th, 1880. from Marion's Daily Star, July 14th, 1880, for original story. The mound in which these remarkable discoveries were made was about 64 feet long and 35 feet wide, top measurement, and gently sloped down to the hill where it was situated. A number of stumps of trees were found on the slope, standing in 2 rows, and on the top of the mound were an oak and hickory stump, all of which bore marks of great age. All of the skeletons were found on a level with the hill and about 8 feet from the top of the mound. In one grave there were 2 skeletons, one male and one female. The female face was looking downward, the male being immediately above with the face looking upward. So the female was laid face down, and then there was like a layer of dirt, and then the male was above that, like laid on top of the dirt facing up.
So they're like back to back.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
The male skeleton measured 9 feet in length, and the female was 8.
Oh, God. That's crazy.
In another grave was found a female skeleton which was encased in a clay coffin, holding in her arms the skeleton of a child 3.5 feet long.
Wow.
Like a baby. By the side of which was an image, which, upon being exposed to the atmosphere, crumbled rapidly. I'm not sure if image means a sculpture or... The remaining 7 were found in single graves and were lying on their sides. The smallest of the 7 was 9 feet in length, and the largest was 10. One single circumstance connected with this discovery was the fact that not a single tooth was found in either mouth, except in the one encased by the clay coffin. That's interesting. On the south end of the mound was erected a stone altar 4.5 feet wide and 12 feet long, built on an earthen foundation nearly 4 feet wide, having in the middle 2 large flagstones from which maybe sacrifices were undoubtedly made, for upon them were found charred bones, cinders, and ashes. This was covered by about 3 feet of earth. So
I don't know. They had a pretty sophisticated burial rites.
yeah,
You know?
a clay coffin is pretty serious there too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a stone sarcophagus, but most Egyptian mummies were not buried in stone sarcophagi either. They're buried in wooden ones.
boxes.
Oh,
Yeah.
clay one is actually more sophisticated than that.
Yeah. All right. Well,
No, we have take a break.
take another break.
All right,
Time flies.
that's right.
You're having a giant time.
And we are back with this giant 2-part podcast on these enormous skeletons. It's a huge topic.
These giant puns are getting old. They're starting to crumble.
Should we just
I got mounds of puns left.
let the Smithsonian take them?
Yeah.
They can disappear from the show.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I did a lot of just like external reading on just seeing what's out there about the subject now. And
What did you find? Skirp.
yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was looking for, is like, what is the, one of the things I tried to do was go find what skeletons, if any, described are normal that have been exhumed from the mounds.
Yeah.
And that's hard to find, right? They don't talk about specific skeletons at all. They're just like you go to Moundsville, Alabama, right? You're looking at Moundsville and like trying to find all the stuff that they have unearthed from there. And there's not very much spoken about it at all.
Yeah.
They just talk about the people who lived there and what they did
Right.
and how they buried it. But there's no like specific accounts of like what, the skeletons that had been discovered there. That's
I
what
wonder
I'm
if we'll
saying.
find it in that book.
I don't know. But yeah, it's really hard to find anything like what this guy compiled.
Yeah.
You know, like some of the books that he got are not readily available online. Like you have to. And there was this one main archaeologist guy that had done all these excavations, and he was not really an archaeologist. He was an amateur, an enthusiast. But he actually, you know, and the idea is that nowadays people look back and like, oh my God, he just ransacked everything and just blah blah blah. But in the book, he talks about how this, like I guess a curator or somebody at a museum somewhere found these boxes of archives of that guy's stashed away on a shelf collecting dust somewhere, unlabeled, or it just had his last name. And they're like, yeah, we had no idea all this stuff would be in there, but it had the guy's last name like labeled on the box.
Yeah.
But they took it out and realized, like in, you know, more modern times, that he actually did extensive records, like kept extensive records of everything that was going on and all the stuff that was found and at what levels and all this kind of shit.
Wow.
And so they, you know, it's like something happened between that guy actually doing all of this stuff and then getting shut down, I think, by the Bureau of Ethnology or whatever it was.
And then ridiculed and
ridiculed and his whole thing. And so the idea was that he was terrible and desecrated all kinds of stuff and was sloppy. And it's like years and years and years later, they pull out boxes of his stuff and find out, no, he kept awesome records of everything that he did and pictures.
like a hit job.
Like mass. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like loads of photographs. Right.
Yeah.
And so there happened to be like a couple of boxes that somebody forgot or overlooked and they weren't destroyed or taken.
Wow.
So it's just crazy to, I don't know. The whole thing is just blows my mind how well it was scrubbed.
Yeah.
Because I know there's another thing that's out there is the sensationalism, basically what we call the hoax fad. We jokingly ridicule the idea as it was a hoax fad.
Yeah.
For 100 years.
Yeah.
For news journalists to make up entire stories about archaeologists who actually did exist and did dig in mounds.
Yeah.
That they found large skeletons. Like what? That doesn't make any sense, number one. But the idea that this, you know,
it was yellow journalism, basically.
Yeah, that's the main idea. And I just don't see how that is even, like, that seems way, even though the idea that this conspiracy is massive, right? Like, that still seems more probable to me than just sort of this random act of fake journalism.
Right.
For 100 years.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're actually talking about an eminent scientist who actually does exist, or a doctor or the mayor or whatever your town, and you write some article and uses them, you lose your freaking, you would get fired.
Right.
As the journalist for that newspaper, because the mayor, doctor, whatever will be like, right. You know, you can't do that. So unless you're claiming that all the town fathers were in on this kind of stuff, like, sure, you can use my name and claim that we found 10-foot skeletons at my dig or whatever. No, it's bullshit. So I agree. Like, on the one hand, you think like that's an enormous conspiracy and that seems hard to believe, but the other explanations are even harder to believe.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And we both read Graham Hancock's new book, America Before, and he didn't talk about giants at all.
Yeah.
And I was I was like, dang, you know, I was all bummed out about it. But I did an interview on Grimerica.
Yeah, which I encourage everybody to go check out.
Yeah. And Darren straight up asked him about it. Like, did you encounter any of these stories? And he was like, yeah, I encountered a bunch of that. But basically, his goal was to stick. He was like, I don't care what size they were.
Yeah.
You know, because they're like, again, we're calling them giants. These were large people.
Yeah.
So, whatever they were, they weren't like 50-foot tall mass. You know, it's
yeah,
like
they weren't like freaking Titans or something like that.
they were large humans. So he was just like, I'm more interested in sticking with the evidence that I can back up with solid, facts. And that is the one troubling thing about this, is that all the facts are written.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wherever the facts still lie, we're not allowed to dig.
Yeah. That's right.
So it's like a 2-part deal. It's like, no, that's all a hoax. Well, then can we go dig to like check?
Well, and the other,
No, you can't.
and the other thing about the other part of that is that a lot of these skeletons or parts of them or pieces of them used to be on display even up to close to recent times, maybe, 1950s, 1960s, even up into the 70s, even in more local museums or private collections or whatever. But once the law went into place that basically said you had to take all that stuff, you can't have like a quote unquote Native American skeleton on display in a museum because it's considered, it's distasteful, right? It's like you're not respecting their heritage or whatever. You can't just like display one of their ancestors, so they can actually come and take it or demand you take it down. So all the museums that had any of these things on display that could possibly have been construed as being Native American heritage were taken down.
Right.
So even if you have a skeleton or a piece of a jawbone or whatever in your local museum, you're not going to tell anybody. You're not going to talk about it. It's down in the basement and where no one can see it and not on display.
Yeah.
So,
and when did that happen? It was like
1970s something, or maybe 1980.
No. I thought it was way before that. No.
The NAGPRA law was 1980s, I
Okay.
think, or 1970s. But yeah, that basically, that was another part of it. Like, even if it was unintentional, right?
Right.
It just meant that anything that was on display or anything that anybody had, suddenly
They just took it down. It was like, oh yeah.
And now it has to be secret, or else it's going to get taken from you because they can come take it and demand it be reburied
And that may not even have been the, like at a museum, if the curator's finding out that this is offensive,
Yeah.
and they're just going to be like, okay, take that down, put it in a
Right.
box, put it down in the thing, and then it gets forgotten about.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Many levels to this. Okay, this is cool. Real short. An ancient tablet with possible hieroglyphics. What is now a profound mystery may in time become the key to unlock still further mysteries that were centuries ago commonplace affairs. I refer to a stone that was found resting against the head of a clay coffin above described. It is a irregularly shaped red sandstone weighing about 18 pounds, being strongly impregnated with oxide of iron, and bearing upon one side two lines of hieroglyphs.
what stone is this one called?
This is just like the clay coffin we were just talking about in the previous one that I read. Leaning up against it was a sandstone tablet slab that had 2 lines of hieroglyphs on one side, and the whole thing was colored with ochre. Basically, it was red, iron oxide, rust.
Actually, our buddy Clint Beckham was at a dig, and I think it was a cave dig, or at least it was in a shelter.
Yeah.
And someone, pulled up this big chunk of limestone that's like 2 dinner plates in size, and just tossed it out of the way.
Oh yeah.
And somebody else went and picked it up and like flipped it over and wiped it off, and it just had all these
Designs all over.
red ochre, like almost like writing, like all over it.
Wow.
On that one side. He has a picture of it.
Whoa.
I mean, it's not like it's looks like it could, some type of writing, but it's more like squiggly lines and stuff, like all
Yeah.
like in a writing style, like in lines all the way down the stone. And then there was a huge fight.
Yeah, of course there was. It was a huge fight. Okay, this is the Davenport stele. So he says, when this Davenport stele is added to the mix, things get even stranger. The stele was found in an Indian mound in 1877, and according to Harvard professor Barry Fell, the stele contains writing in Egyptian, Iberian, Punic, and Libyan. The Smithsonian, of course, says it, and others like it are fakes.
Yeah.
So that was the author talking. So here is the newspaper article in question. Smithsonian involved in strange ancient Iowa tablet hoax with America BC's Barry Fell by Otto Nauth. Des Moines Register, February 20th, 1977. Egyptian and Libyan explorers sailed up the Mississippi River 2,500 years ago and left a tablet where Davenport now stands, a Harvard professor said. That's absurd, countered a former Iowa State archaeologist who said the professor is perpetuating a 100-year-old hoax. Harvard's Dr. Barry Fell, a marine biologist by profession and an epigraphist by avocation, said he had deciphered the front and back of a tablet that was found in an Indian mound in 1877. The tablet, he stated, contains writing not only in Egyptian hieroglyphs but also in Iberian, Punic, and Libyan. He likened it in importance to the famed Rosetta Stone, which, because it said the same thing in 3 languages, enabled scientists to decipher hieroglyphs. It is unquestionably genuine, he stated. Not so, said University of Iowa archaeologist Marshall McCusick. Is that right? McCusick. The tablet is part of one of the most thoroughly documented hoax in American archaeology. Members of the old Davenport Academy of Science inscribed the tablets and buried them in a mound on the old Cook farm, knowing the tablets would be found by a member they wanted to ridicule, McCusick said.
Yeah.
So first of all, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So remember, these are people from the Davenport Academy of Science. These are archaeologists, and they're doing this to one of their own. Okay, they're making. He's claiming that archaeologists were making a hoax in order to ridicule another archaeologist.
Yeah.
Think about that first.
Yeah, that's how hardcore this shit is, dude.
But the hoax got out of hand when the Smithsonian Institution got involved and the discovery of the tablets received national publicity. McCusick documented the hoax in a 1970 book, The Davenport Conspiracy. Well, that all may well be true, Fell said. This is back to the Harvard professor. In a recent telephone interview, and 2 of the 3 tablets in the mound probably are fake. But the third, which he refers to as the Davenport calendar stele, definitely is not. So this makes me think that... Anyway, I'll keep reading, and I'll go back to what I'm thinking here. This stele with the spring equinox scene on it is described in Barry Fell's book, America BC, as one of the most important ever discovered. It is used in the ceremonial erection of a New Year pillar made of bundles of reeds called jed, Fell said. Writing in the curved lines above says the same thing in Iberian and Libyan. The Egyptian hieroglyphs along the top explain how to use the stone. 2 Indian pipes carved in the shape of elephants found in the mound are also genuine, Fell says. Barry Fell publishes controversial America BC. Fell's account of deciphering the tablet and the implications of its message are contained in his book just published, America BC, Ancient Settlers in the New World. The book deals with there's another book, guys. Somebody.
Yeah.
America BC. The book deals with a wide variety of finds, particularly in New England, but also ranging as far west as Oklahoma, which Fell contends proved that the ancient Egyptians, Libyans, Celts, and other people were able to reach America and settle here well before the birth of Christ. Portions of the book are reprinted in the February's issue of Reader's Digest. The Davenport stele, Fell writes, is the only one upon which occurs a trilingual text in the Egyptian, Iberian, Punic, and Libyan languages. This stele, long condemned as a meaningless forgery, is in fact one of the most important steles ever discovered, he writes. One side of the tablet, since its discovery, it is separated by cleavage so that each face is now separate, depicts the celebration of the Jed festival of Osiris at the time of the spring equinox on March 21st, Fell says. The other side contains the corresponding fall hunting festival at the time of the autumnal equinox, September 21st. The writing runs along the top of the spring tablet. The Iberian and Libyan texts, Fell says, both say the same thing, that the stone carries an inscription giving the secret of regulating the calendar. This secret is given in the Egyptian text of hieroglyphics. This Egyptian text, Fell says, may be rendered in English as follows. To a pillar attach a mirror in such a manner that when the sun rises on New Year's Day, it will cast a reflection onto the stone called the Watcher. New Year's Day occurs when the sun is in conjunction with the zodiacal constellation Aries in the house of the Ram, the balance of night and day being about to reverse. At this time, the spring equinox hold the festival of the New Year and the religious rite of the New Year. So if it was the
Aries.
time of Aries,
Oh
that's
my God.
2000 BC. This festival, 2000 BC is when it started, basically. This festival, Fell says, consists in the ceremonial erection of a special New Year pillar made of bundles of reeds called a jed. The tablet shows long lines of worshippers pulling on ropes with the pillar at the center. So how did ancient hieroglyphs get to Iowa? How did this extraordinary document come to be in a mound buried in Iowa? Fell asks. Is it genuine? Certainly it is genuine, he says, for neither the Libyan nor the Iberian scripts had been deciphered at the time that the stone was found. So in other words, it can't be a hoax if those are, right? The guys who were like hoaxing this other dude could not have possibly written in those two languages because no one had deciphered them yet.
That's freaking awesome.
The Libyan and Iberian texts are consistent with each other and with the hieroglyphic text. As to how it came to be in Iowa, some speculations may be made. The stele appears to be of local American manufacture, perhaps made by a Libyan or an Iberian astronomer who copied an older model brought from Egypt or more likely from Libya, hence probably brought on a Libyan ship. The priest of Osiris may have issued the stone originally as a means of regulating the calendar in far distant lands, right? So basically what he's saying in the story is that these guys who traveled here, these Iberians or Libyans, get this calendar stele instructional stone issued from a priest of Osiris from Egypt. Right. Then they flip it over and write their own inscriptions on their languages, explaining what's going on the back, and it eventually ends up in the Americas. The date is unlikely to be earlier than about 800 BC, for we do not know of Iberian or Libyan inscriptions earlier than that date. So he's saying the earliest ones we know of are from 800 BC.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean it isn't older than that. The explorers presumably sailed up the Mississippi River and colonized in the Davenport area, Fell says, and he hazards a guess that they came on ships commanded by a Libyan skipper of the Egyptian Navy during the 22nd or Libyan dynasty of Egypt. Interesting. A period of overseas exploration. An Egyptian astronomer priest probably came with the explorers, he speculates, and it was he or his successors who engraved this stone. The hunting scene tablet is engraved in a Micmac script and is the work of an Algonquin Indian of about 2,000 years ago, Fell says. He does not explain the discrepancy in time, but goes on to say that the Algonquin culture shows evidence of contact with early Egyptians. The approximate translation of that is this: hunting of beasts and their young, waterfowl and fishes, the herds of the Lord, and their young, the beasts of the Lord. It is the earliest known example of Micmac script, Fell says. He makes no mention in his book of McCusick's account of the Davenport fraud, but this is not because he was not aware of it. Avoiding old disputes. I just felt it was kinder not to mention it, he said recently. It was my desire to avoid raking up old disputes. Who cares whether somebody defrauded somebody else 100 years ago? I attach no importance to these things. That's why this guy got mad. He's like, no, this is a fraud and you're not attaching importance to it. 95% of frauds turned out to be true. The Smithsonian, which was the first to declare the tablets fraudulent, had no experts in ancient languages. Only those who thought they were, Fell said. And McCusick himself makes no claim to be a linguist, Fell says. Fell has been investigating similar archaeological finds that have been labeled frauds, and he says, we find that 95% of them are actually genuine.
Yeah.
There's a tendency on the part of those established in a field of science either to ignore or label as fraud anything that does not fit in with their preconceived notion of how things should be, he said. It is much easier to cry fraud at something out of the ordinary than to investigate it, Fell says. Americans are throwing away 2,000 years of their history in this way. Fell concedes he has never been in Iowa and was not allowed to see the tablet, which is now in possession of the Putnam Museum in Davenport. He says he did his deciphering from photographs, which is the usual way epigraphists do their work. McCusick has taken up the challenge by writing a report to Science, the weekly publication of the prestigious American Academy for the Advancement of Science, the ASS. He said the Davenport frauds were first exposed in Science in the 1880s and later reviewed in 1970. McCusick pointed out that the slate for one of the tablets, not Fell's Davenport stele, came from a wall of the old Slate House, a notorious early-day house of ill fame. The third tablet, a piece of limestone with a tablet, is engraved on a piece of slate, said a University of Iowa archaeologist. In 1970, McCusick wrote a book about the Davenport conspiracy that surrounded the finding of the tablets in an Indian mound in 1877. Holes, let's see, holes diameter were something, this is weird. Okay, so basically there's a hole in it that was used to hang the slate. Fell concedes this tablet may well have been a fake. Figure of an Indian may have been a fake. A figure of an Indian on it and came from Schmidt's quarry not far from the place where the tablets were found. The farm site is now occupied by the Thomson Hayward Chemical Company. A dictionary and almanacs provided inspiration for writing on the tablets, he said. A janitor at the academy admitted carving various Indian pipes which were also found in the mound, McCusick said. They were soaked in grease or rubbed with shoe black to make them look old. 2 members of the academy were expelled in the ruckus that followed the claims of fraud, but a curious sidelight to the controversy lies in the fact that none of the participants ever admitted in writing that they actually forged anything. All were under threat of libel at the time. The closest thing to a confession in McCusick's book is a statement by Judge James Bellinger made in 1947. Bellinger tells of copying hieroglyphics out of old almanacs on slate he tore off the wall of the old slate house. The story becomes suspect, however, when McCusick points out that Bellinger was only 9 years old at the time the tablets were found. Whatever the judge may have said, he was nowhere near the scene of the events he so vividly describes. So in the report to Science, McCusick says of the Fell book, it is an unfortunate imposition upon a gullible public, God, to have the Davenport frauds accepted as genuine and used to explain Egyptian explorations at the Mississippi 3,000 years ago. Fell, as a Harvard scholar, has a scholarly responsibility to know the professional literature on subjects he is publishing theories about. Yeah, he needs to know the professional literature, not look at the stele, Don't look at the freaking evidence. You need to know what people have been saying before you.
Right.
His book, America BC, is irresponsible amateurism and is unfortunately but one example of a genre of speculation that is growing and sells well to the public. I also hate that. Like, they say this about Graham. It's just for gullible people. And it's like, I mean, can you be more condescending? Just a little more? Modern technology may provide the means for resolving the issue of whether one or all the tablets are fake, says Dr. Dwayne Anderson, who succeeded McCusick as state archaeologist. If the tablets could be submitted to a rigorous microscopic examination, it might be possible to determine that the writing is older than a mere 100 years, Anderson said. Rock ages and often a patina or microscopic crust develops on the surface. It might also be possible to detect traces of modern steel if the incisions were made with modern instruments, he said. But they might at least be able to reveal if the writing was done before 1877. Anyone wishing to make such an examination will have to secure the cooperation of the Putnam Museum, which is the present custodian of these tablets. So these still exist. Museum director Joseph Cartwright has steadfastly refused access to the tablets, saying they have been removed from the museum collection. We are not anxious to dig up the whole controversy again, he said in a recent telephone interview. It is not in the museum's interest to make them available. This is something the museum is not interested in.
You're a museum. You don't dig things up.
Asked if it might not be interesting for the public to put the tablets on display in view of the present renewal of the controversy, Cartwright replied, "It is our prerogative to decide, not yours." So,
yeah. But, okay.
So what do you...
Egyptians coming here. Wait, what do you want to...
Well, I just want to say, brushing all that away, you have this one, you have stuff that the guy's like, yeah, those might be frauds. And I know that this whole fraud thing and there was libel and all this stuff happening back then. But the fact is that there's this one tablet that has 2 types of writing on it that were not translated and could not have been written at the time that the fraud was perpetrated.
Right.
And so this tablet can't be part of that fraud. And everyone seems to be ignoring that.
Yeah.
No one discusses that particular part of the evidence.
Right.
There's like, look, this fraud happened. Everyone knows it happened. Blah, and you're like, okay, but what about these 2 languages? Who wrote that? I hate how this happens. And it's so often in these stories. There's this one part that makes the evidence for this being some ancient and unexplainable, quote unquote, out of place artifact concrete. And they just dance. They'll write enormous books and papers that never mention that one part.
Yeah.
I can't stand that. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the same deal with the Khufu freaking half cartouche or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. The half cartouche. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say that there's a lot of stuff out there about how possibly the Egyptians came over here.
Yeah.
Well, you have a culture that lasted for 4,000 years.
Right.
Why shouldn't they have circumnavigated the globe,
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems
And they had huge ships that could carry 400 people that had high prows that could navigate in open ocean. Yeah.
And even if they weren't intentionally doing it, you would imagine that after 4,000 years of
Somebody
being
would
out at sea, they
accidentally
might
end up
accidentally end up over here.
Yeah. I don't know enough about ocean currents. I know there's something about the Atlantic gyre that, like, if you're in the right place, you'll just end up over here even if you don't try because of the way the current is going.
Yeah. I'm just saying, 4,000 years. Come on.
Right.
Like, it doesn't seem... Why does that seem so unlikely to archaeologists, you know? They're just like, no. You don't know that.
Right. The oceans are highways, not barriers.
Yeah.
Has been the, as far as I can tell, like David Hatcher Childress has been saying this for 40 years or something like that in his books, that the oceans are freaking highways. Diffusionism. That you see that every culture that got to a certain level of civilization just went, and their artifacts at the very least ended up all over the world because of trade, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Right. So you find like a coin from the Roman Empire in China, and it's not because a Roman necessarily went to China, but because there was the trade across the Silk Road.
Right.
And that coin passed hand in hand in hand because it's made of gold. No one cares if it's a Roman coin.
That's right.
Right. And it ends up in China in the hidden city or whatever. And it's like, no one, you're not necessarily saying that Romans were there, but it shows you that people have been traveling all over the place all the time, and stuff ends up in places where you just least expect it.
Yeah. Yep. And there was a whole section of the book about weird coins that had been found here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't think it's unlikely. I mean, I think it's very likely that the Egyptians.
Yeah, but we're not scientists, folks.
Yeah, you know.
We're just the gullible
theorists.
public, right?
Yeah. So I have a funny one.
Okay.
And I don't know if you read
What time
this.
we got here, too? Because I know this. I think I started this thing late.
Oh, really?
Did I?
Oh, yeah, we're 10 minutes over. So maybe I should.
Yeah, because I
All right, I'll start.
I want to turn on the AC, too.
I'll start the next segment.
It's freaking hot in here.
With this.
All right. We'll be right back.
More skeletons. Ladies and gentlemen, final segment of the final hour of the second gigantic episode. So I have a couple of stories here. One is just kind of funny, and the other is sort of an example. This one, Russ decided not to read because can't really tell if it's a hoax or whatever. But that's not the reason why I'm reading it.
Right.
So here it goes. The horned skull of Sayre, Pennsylvania. Sayre, I guess. Charleston Daily Mail, September 20th, 1916. Sayre is a borough in Bradford County, Pennsylvania, 59 miles northwest of Scranton. The exact year is not clear, but during the 1880s, a large burial mound was discovered in Sayre. It was reported that a group of Americans uncovered several strange human skulls and bones. The skeletons belonged to anatomically normal men, with the exception of bony projections located about 2 inches above the eyebrows. It appeared that the skulls had horns. The bones were characterized as giant, as they were representative of people over 7 feet tall. Scientists estimated that the bodies had been buried around 1200 CE. The archaeological discovery was made by a reputable group of antiquarians, including Dr. G. P. Donahue, the Pennsylvania State Dignitary of the Presbyterian Church, A. B. Skinner of the American Investigating Museum, and W. K. Moorhead of Phillips Academy, Andover, Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing that now. Freaking acronyms.
These giant skulls with protrusions from the skull was discovered by Moorhead. Aptronyms. Okay. And there's actually a picture of the skull with the, the.
Well, that's
horns.
a picture that may be it. Yeah, it's not really clear.
Okay.
I've seen that picture. That's the picture I've seen before, but I don't know if that story is connected to that skull or not. That's just an example of a horned skull. But and he also in the book he shows the skull. What is it? Is it Michelangelo's sculpture of somebody's sculpture of Moses, and Moses has those horns on his head.
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
like, look, this isn't just in these myths or whatever.
Right.
There's these weird
No,
myths.
of course not. I mean,
yeah, horned beings and deities have been.
like all the weird, Sumerian stories where the
horned
the
heads.
Nephas basically, they
Yeah.
had various sets of horns. We talked about this last time.
Yeah.
That sort of wrapped, and it was a sign of rank.
Yeah.
How many horns you had.
Right.
The highest rank was like 6 horns or something like
Right.
that.
3 or 4 sets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is not from the book. This is one of the stories I came across while looking online.
Supposedly, by the way, I was going to say the military symbol of the chevrons are symbolic of the way the horns came around the front.
Right.
Like, if you look at the serpent crown of Ishtar on that sculpture, the Babylonian sculpture of Ishtar, they say that's the serpent crown of Ishtar. She's got those horns on her heads. They come up into this chevron shape on their forehead. And so the military ranks, where you keep stacking them on, means you're higher rank.
Right.
Yeah.
Still using it today,
That's right.
folks.
Yep.
So this one, this is another. I just can't tell if this is a hoax. And then you get to the end of the story and you're like, okay, this guy's probably just totally full of it. But this is in Texas. And
this is
that's
not
why,
from the book, right?
Yeah, this is not from the book. This is why I pulled this one out. Friday, July 11th, 1919. A giant skeleton, 18 feet tall. Austin, Texas. This is the newspaper clipping. It's actually a photo of the newspaper clipping. June 14th. If the report that the fossilized skeleton of a giant 18 feet tall has been found near Seymour, Texas is true, it is the most important ethnological discovery ever made in the world, remarked Dr. J.E. Pierce, professor of anthropology of the University of Texas. Okay.
Okay. So far, so good.
So far, so good. Why would you quote this guy if he didn't actually say that?
Right.
So obviously this was a real deal. This is not a fake, a fake story.
But the doctor could have said that. He's like, if this was actually true, then it's the most important thing.
Yeah. So far, so good.
Right.
It would break all previous records of giants by nearly 10 feet.
Yeah.
That's the next thing he says. He's 18 feet tall.
Right.
Okay. As the tallest man known to anthropological research was only 8 feet, 5 inches in height. So that's what he says. So that's interesting. The skeleton is in possession of W.J. McKinney, Houston, Texas, oil prospector, who found it, and has been seen by a number of people who vouch for the truth of the size of the relic of a heretofore unknown race. Mr. McKinney, while making an excavation on the narrow watershed between the Brazos and Wichita rivers, came upon the fossilized skeleton near the surface. Mr. McKinney writes, I estimate that this man weighed from 2,000 to 2,500 pounds. According to my deductions, he lived about 2,800 years ago. The skull is 6 times the size of that of an ordinary man. Mr. McKinney does not explain how he arrived at the figures as to the probable period of the existence of this remarkable man. It is probable that the bones of the giant will be donated to the Smithsonian Institution, which, under the direction of Dr. J. Walter Fox, is now conducting an anthropological research work in Texas.
Well, I have to say that, I don't specifically have any kind of problem with an 18-foot giant. But whether that story is actually talking about a real one, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But this is the thing that run across in here. Like the fact that the writer, the journalist, he's talking about this guy.
It seems like he's making fun of the guy who's claiming he made the discovery.
Yeah. He's quoting the guy, but the guy claims, like, he makes some outrageous claims, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, he's talking about the
Biblical in nature, I bet.
the deal with the Smithsonian Institute. This guy, Dr. J. Walker Fox, he's now conducting an anthropological research work in Texas. There's all these other facts in here
Yeah.
that nobody would have a problem with.
Right.
In any given story. That's the way so many of the stories are. And you're like, okay, so maybe there's some fake news in here, but there's so much other stuff, like the quotes of people. Like this guy's just like, this dude, this 18-foot tall guy would be like 10 feet taller than the other giants that have been found everywhere.
Right.
So,
except that's not true because 14-foot ones have been found in some of these.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, he's an anthropologist. And if he's basically saying, he's saying that 8.5-foot skeletons are real.
Right. That's true. Good point. I can't see the watcher text up here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Michelangelo put horns on Moses. Thank you, watcher. I knew there was something up there I needed to read.
Shut up, watcher. Talking here.
Okay. Extremely ancient, this is from the book, extremely ancient red-haired mummies. Mummies of ancient Caucasian giants with red hair have been found in startlingly diverse areas of the country, from Florida to Nevada. Along with these finds, ample evidence of sophisticated culture, such as fine weavings, has also been found. Then there are the members of North Dakota's Mandan tribe, long known from the earliest days for their red hair and blue eyes. Perhaps the magnitude of the mystery they represent has been partially responsible for the lack of general knowledge about them, or it has been because of definite attempts at suppression of evidence that flouts all previous theories about origins. Giant mummies of Spirit Cave. What do you think the international reaction would be to news that mummies were found in Egypt that predated the earliest ones ever discovered there by more than 5,000 years? Surely this would be front page news from one end of the planet to the other. Well, maybe. I think he is overestimating how much.
Hey, he like was the editor for the, what was it?
Miami Herald?
Miami Herald. Maybe he knows, man.
Yeah, I think he's assuming that the Egyptologists would let that story get out.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
That's what I mean. Yet, well, I guess you're right, because he's saying, what do you think the international reaction would be to that news? Yeah. I'm just saying that news would never get out of Egypt.
Yeah.
Yet news that two 9,500-year-old mummies were found in America has elicited barely a whisper. You may think this is impossible or that I'm referring to some discredited rumor, but the truth could not be clearer or more convincing. It turns out that the original, and remember, I just want to point out, this is not a newspaper article. This is the author speaking directly. It turns out that the original discovery was made in 1940, and it has taken more than 60 years to come to light. Perhaps the only reason the public is now belatedly finding out about this earth-shattering discovery is the fact that the remains were not turned over to the Smithsonian, but had kept instead by the Nevada State Museum. The original find in 1940 of two amazingly well-preserved mummies was made by Sidney and Georgia Wheeler, a husband and wife archaeological team working for the Nevada State Parks Division, who were commissioned to study the archaeological effects that guano mining was having on any possible historical remains to be found in the arid caves scattered across the Nevada wastelands. Bat guano is mined because it contains saltpeter, which is used to make fertilizer and is the main ingredient of gunpowder. The site was appropriately called Spirit Cave and is located 13 miles east of Fallon in Nevada. In order to find the mummies and the 67 related artifacts associated with the burial, the Wheelers had to dig through several feet of guano droppings that covered the base of the cave and preserved what lay underneath. The two human mummies were expertly wrapped in a highly sophisticated weaving made of tulle matting that exhibited extremely fine knotting and hand weaving not thought to exist until thousands of years later. Because the mummies were sealed in bat guano, the weavings are extremely well preserved, and they are arguably the greatest evidence of ancient weaving in the world, yet close to nothing is generally known about them. The male mummy was in better condition than the female and was found lying on a fur blanket, dressed in a twisted skin robe with leather moccasins on its feet and a twined mat sewn around its head and shoulders. A similar mat was wrapped around the lower portion of the body and bound under the feet. Skin remained on the back and shoulders, as well as a small tuft of straight dark hair, which changed to reddish brown when exposed to light. The age of the mummy was estimated at 45 years old when he died. He's not 45 years ancient, right? And its height well in excess of 6 feet. The original dig in 1940 was led by the Wheelers with the help of local residents, and the 2 mummies and 67 related objects were taken to the Nevada State Museum, where they were examined and dated between 1,500 and 2,000 years old. They were then transported to the museum storage facility in Carson City and promptly forgotten about. In 1996, the mummies came to the attention of Irv Taylor, an anthropologist at the University of California, Riverside, who decided that new breakthroughs in mass spectrometry dating could reveal the true age of the mummies, especially in light of the extremely good condition of the tool diamond-plated matte wrappings, and that's plated as in pleated, more like. He's talking about a weaving, not like metal plating or anything like that. Diamond plated does not mean it was plated in diamonds.
Oh, I thought that was like
it's the pattern.
The diamond plate that's normally on like your tailgate.
Yeah, no. That's what I was saying. It's plated is P-L-A-I.
Gotcha.
T-E-D, yeah. Pleated, or I guess. The excellent preservation of the mummified bones and associated assorted relics. One can only imagine Taylor's stunned reaction when the results came in. The mummies were dated to 9,400 years before present, in what is scientifically referred to as uncalibrated radiocarbon years before the present, which is actually 11.5 KYA. So, yeah. Yet instead of this momentous news shattering the world of archaeology to its very roots, the Bureau of Land Management stepped into the breach and shut down all news of the discovery in 1997 when it ruled in favor of a claim by the Paiute Shoshone tribe of Fallon, Nevada, that the bones belonged to them by rights of the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, NAGPRA. Although no DNA testing was allowed at the time of Taylor's dating, the Paiute Shoshone tribe's claim held until pressure from the academic community forced the courts to reconsider the claims of the Bureau of Land Management related to the Indian ancestral claims. In 2006, the courts overturned the findings of the Bureau and the Paiute Shoshone tribe and allowed DNA testing of the mummy by Douglas W. Olsey, division head of physical anthropology at the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History, and Richard L. Jantz, an anthropology professor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. The tests revealed that the mummy was of Caucasian origin, with a long face and cranium that most closely resembled either Nordic or Ainu.
What is Ainu?
The Ainu are the indigenous of Japan, and they're white people.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
They bore no ancestral relationship to either the Paiute or Shoshone tribes. Although these findings were made public and extensively covered by the local media, this groundbreaking news has received barely a glimmer of attention in the outside world. In order to put this find in its proper context and understand the other related and equally amazing finds in this part of the western United States, it is imperative that we reconstruct the local topography of this area as it existed 10,000 years ago. Although this knowledge should be commonplace to most school children, the true map of ancient America remains a complete mystery to almost all of its citizens. As it turns out, much like the Sahara region prior to 6000 BCE, the western United States prior to the gigantic Lassen volcanic explosion, posited at sometime around 5000 BCE, was home to one of the biggest freshwater lakes in the world and contained, I think he's talking about, what's it called? Salt Lake is the remnants of it. Bonneville.
Lake Bonneville.
So, biggest freshwater lakes in the world and contain a lush biodiversity that one geologist has characterized as abundant in every respect, perhaps the lushest in the world at that time, with every kind of plant and animal necessary for human life. The area of this ancient lake was immense, covering approximately 8,500 square miles.
Wow.
In the northeast section of Nevada, bordering on California and Oregon. Maybe it's not Lake Bonneville.
Well, Lovelock cave is on the ancient banks of some massive lake.
That's it, yeah. So, okay, here it is. Its name is Lake Lahontan. And at its peak, around 11,000 years ago, it was almost 1,000 feet deep in places and was fed by the Humboldt, Walker, Truckee, and Carson river systems. Remnants of the dried-out lake can be seen at Pyramid Lake.
Hey, what?
Lake Russell.
What? Hey.
And Lake Tahoe.
Oh.
At its peak, the lake's resting waterline was approximately 5,200 feet. And consequently, many of the finds around its ancient shoreline are found at least at that height. So 5,200 feet above sea level. That's what they're talking about there. Not that the lake was that deep. The Lenni Lenape Indians of the east coast of America report that they originally lived in the west until their world was destroyed by fire and they were forced to migrate to the other side of the Mississippi River in search of food and shelter. When we understand that these desert regions were once home to abundant life, the other related prehistoric archaeological finds in this area, because, see, this is why, this is a bit of an aside, but this is the area where people have claimed to have found ancient boats stuck in the canyon walls, almost fossilized, not fossilized, but like jammed in walls of canyons in the middle of deserts. And you're like, how did a freaking like ancient Greek boat get stuck? Well, if there was a lake, maybe not a Greek boat, but like, a Phoenician or something.
Yeah.
Some
there
very
would be a river from that lake to it
the ocean,
going to the ocean.
Yeah. So you're in the
should be
middle
able
of
to
the desert,
navigate it.
and you're down in a canyon, and there's a freaking wooden ship stuck in the side of the wall. It's
awesome.
like, what the fuck? Childress talks about that in one of his books, The Mysteries of the Southwest, I think. So yeah, when we understand that the desert regions were once home to abundant life, the other related prehistoric archaeological finds in this area become understandable and even expected, as we are no longer looking at isolated desert remains devoid of logic and contextual understanding. In light of this, equally amazing finds at Lovelock Cave, 80 miles east of Reno, should come as no surprise. Once again, we are dealing with a guano-filled cave on the shoreline of Lake Lahontan in an area called the Great Basin. Only this time, the original find was made in 1911 and involved considerably more bodies and artifacts that, because of their highly unusual nature, are routinely criticized and dismissed by mainstream archaeology to this day, although the related finds at Spirit Cave should change all of the doubters' minds, especially as the reality of Lake Lahontan's Great Basin culture becomes more well-known and accepted. Great Basin culture, that's pretty cool. Like, the idea that you got this enormous lake and just people were living all along the shores.
Yeah, that's...
Quite simply, what we are dealing with here is what the popular press at the time called red-haired giants, which immediately roused the hackles of mainstream academia and caused them to immediately sweep the whole unpleasant subject under the rug. Fortunately for us, the skeletons and artifacts were not sent to the Smithsonian. Although many of the pieces have disappeared from the historical record, some can still be found in local universities and museums in the area. So, the legend of the Sitica. The Paiute Indians have a legend about their ancestors and red-haired giants. And we've talked about this on the podcast, but I'm going to read this because it's great. These giants, known as the Sitica, Sitica, I think, which is very, well...
Sumerian sounding?
Yeah. Were a red-haired tribe of cannibals who lived near the Paiutes, often harassing them with constant war and occasionally captured victims to eat. Eventually, the various Paiute groups had enough and decided to band together to eradicate the Sitica, translated as tool eaters or tule. Legend has it that the Paiutes cornered the giants and forced them underground into a cave system, piled brush over the entrance, and set it on fire with flaming arrows, extinguishing the Sitica for good. Modern historians and anthropologists have dismissed this legend as fantasy, an allegorical myth, but others have claimed that archaeological finds indicate otherwise. Could there really have been a race of Caucasoid giants that inhabited North America before the Native Americans? Are the artifacts... Well, that's not what's being said here. The Paiutes were there with them. Are the artifacts discovered in Lovelock Cave proof that history is wrong, or are they just another hoax? Lovelock Cave was first caught the attention of archaeologists in 1924, 13 years after miners began harvesting the several foot thick layer of bat guano that had built up on the cave floor. Guano bowls. Collect the whole set. The miners continued to dig until sifting out the ancient relics beneath. Think about this. The miners continued to dig until sifting out the ancient relics beneath the top layer of bat guano became too much of a hassle.
Losers.
Losers?
Users.
They notified the University of California about their finds, and the excavation
Oh, okay. Well,
began.
That's
Yeah,
not too bad.
Not too bad.
Pretty cool.
Among the artifacts found were woven cloth tools, duck decoys for hunting, inscribed stones, and supposedly very tall, red-haired mummies. Thousands of pieces were found discarded outside of the cave after being separated from the guano. Most of the non-human artifacts can be found in local museums or at the University of California Museum of Paleontology in Berkeley. We got to go there. But the mysterious bones and mummies are not easy to come by. The artifacts themselves prove that an advanced culture did indeed predate the Paiutes, but whether the legend of red-haired giants is historically accurate remains unknown. What is significant to note is that the scientific community has assiduously scrubbed all references to the 6 to 8 foot tall red-haired skeletons found at the site. As will be seen, this repeated effort to clear the historical record of all references to a pre-Indian Caucasian culture in the United States can be seen as working in harmony with the NAGPRA policies of the federal government, which works on agendas based on political correctness and not objective science.
Yeah, somewhere in there he gives the dates for the duck decoys. They were actually dated. And I was wondering what that was. I asked the watcher. He says...
Well, I'm going to keep going here.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess officially they're dated to 400 BC to AD 100.
Lovelock Cave, or Horseshoe Cave as it was then known, was originally mined for fertilizer in 1911 by two miners named David Pugh and James Hart.
How does this happen?
Bat guano miners David Pugh and James Hart, who were hired to mine for bat guano from the cave to be later used as gunpowder and fertilizer. They removed a layer of guano estimated to be from 3 to 6 feet deep and weighing about 250 tons. The guano was dug up from the upper cave deposit, screened on the hillside outside the cave, and shipped to a fertilizer company in San Francisco. The miners had dumped the top layers into a heap outside of the cave. They were aware of the presence of some ancient artifacts, but only the most interesting specimens were saved. As the finds began to accumulate, L.L. Loud of the Paleontology Department of the University of California was contacted by the mining company, and in the spring of 1912 he arrived to recover any materials that remained from the guano mining of the previous year. Loud also excavated Lovelock Cave for 5 months and reportedly collected roughly 10,000 material remains. The majority of the finds were made in refuse pits inside and outside the cave, but the University of California alleges that no comprehensive list of the skeletons and artifacts that were found were ever made, which is quite unusual and not in keeping with the protocol of the day.
Yeah, sure. It was made.
Yeah. What was reported at the time was that in addition to the thousands of artifacts, mummies similar to the ones that found at Spirit Cave were, in fact, unearthed. The mummies were reported as being from 6 to 8 feet tall with red hair and lying some 4 feet under the surface of the cave. 12 years after the first excavation, in the summer of 1924, Loud returned to Lovelock Cave with M.R. Harrington of the Museum of the American Indian. It was at this time that the most famous Lovelock artifacts were found, the amazing cache of 11 duck decoys that attest to the lake culture that predominated the region.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
That's really old,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 5,000 BC was
That's
when the
what I'm
lake
saying.
disappeared. Yeah.
Yes.
These amazing artifacts were made from bundled tulle, which the Lake Lahontan culture used much like papyrus for clothing, boats, and artistic and religious object. The decoys were painted and feathered, and despite their rich cultural and artistic importance, again, for unknown reasons, neither the Museum of the American Indian, nor the Smithsonian, nor the American Museum of Natural History accepted any of these objects into their collections. It was not until 1984 that the duck decoys were properly studied in an academic environment. At that time, A.J.T. Tull of the University of Arizona Tucson conducted the dating of the specimens. Duck decoy 13 was dated at 2080 plus 330 BP, and duck decoy 13 was dated at 2250 plus 230 BCE.
So wait. 230
so yeah,
BC.
that's right.
Yeah, 400.
Yeah, around 400 BC. In addition to these duck decoys, a wide range of other materials has also been recovered that includes slings, nets, sandals, tunics, and baskets. Not only are these items not on general public display, they also have never been tested as to their antiquity.
So what's he saying here?
How do we know they used it for clothing? None of that would have survived because they used it for one thing, and they must have used it for everything. Yeah, I don't know what you're saying there, Watcher.
But okay, when the lake supposedly vanished
Because of this gigantic volcanic eruption.
5,000 BC.
Yeah.
But they still had duck decoys out in the desert.
Yeah.
In
Seems dumb.
400 BC. Come on.
I know. It seems dumb.
Oh, they made clothes out of the same stuff they used to make paper?
Not all ancient people. Well, yeah, we make houses out of the same stuff we use to make paper, right? Wood.
Yeah.
The pulp pounding that you do with whatever you're making paper with does not mean that the thing before you do all that pulp pounding is not hard and awesome. What?
We also have this weird rock veneer. It's like,
Yeah,
we take a bunch of rock, we smash it, and then we put it together again in these tiny little sheets. We call it sheet rock. And then we put paper on the outside of it
Right.
so that it will burn.
That's right. Need to
Just
make
to
sure
make
that
sure it
sheetrock
burns.
will get set on fire. Yeah. Here's some paper.
It's a conspiracy by the sheetrock company. They're like, we can't give them all this rock.
yeah.
It'll last forever. Put paper on it.
Yeah. And just for good measure, slap glue on there and stick wallpaper over that. And that'll make sure it'll burn. Okay.
Man, that's crazy, dude. Okay, so anybody in Nevada, you should go to Lovelock Cave.
Or at least like look around the area where it is and
Well, I
walk
have.
those canyons.
So so if you go on Google or Google Earth or Google Maps, I can't remember. I think I found it. Where the cave is. There's like this little dirt road that goes up on top of this small promontory, and there's like a little circle drive. There's nothing anywhere nearby,
Oh, wow.
but you can see the ancient bank of the lake down below. And then there's this part in the picture I was looking at where there's this big shadow cast in this one spot, and there looks like there's like a
overhang.
lighter colored spill.
Oh, yeah.
It looks just like a shelter
Yeah.
would normally look. It has this spill out in front of it, especially one that's been occupied.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and there's like a circle drive up above where, it seems like you would be able to drive up onto that thing. Like, and that driveway or that dirt road goes all the way to a highway somewhere. And so you'd be able to get out there, drive all the way up to this top part and park, and then hike down off the edge and go along the bank a little ways. And you should be able to get to that cave. And there's just nothing out there. It's not like it's a cave that has like park access or anything.
yeah.
There's just nothing anywhere nearby.
Wow.
So
the gate and fence and all the guards must be miles away.
yeah, they're miles away, right? Jeez.
Since the scientific community refuses to acknowledge the reality of the skeletons found at Lovelock, the site has been dated by studying the coprolite droppings found in association with the other artifacts on the accepted surface floor of the cave. Based on those findings, it has been determined that the Tool people had a diet rich in fish and game, and the earliest habitation of the cave has been dated to 2580 BCE. So BCE is before Common Era. So
Right.
that's still too late for the lake, but
Right.
they're still
I
saying...
mean, what are you going to... Got to look at this place on Google Earth. There's just nothing.
Right. How could they be a fish-eating culture?
How can you even live there?
Right.
It's just in the middle of the desert.
Since the remains of Spirit Cave were found in the same general area and on the shoreline of the same lake, this could mean that as the lake shrunk in size, the resident culture moved to recently exposed caves closer to the new shoreline, Or more simply, that the cave has never been properly studied and more extensive excavations could reveal continuous occupation going back at least 5,000 more years to a date that corresponds to the similar cultural context of the findings at Spirit Cave. So he's trying to reconcile the dates between these two. Because Spirit Cave is 9,000 something BCE.
But Lovelock is 400
Lovelock
BC.
is like, well, yeah, the earliest stuff they dated to 2,580 BCE. That's still...
Yeah, like 400 or 500 BC.
Yeah.
It's like...
No. BCE means before Common Era.
Right, 2,500...
No, this is not BP, before present. Before Common Era.
Before Common Era. Okay, I'm sorry.
BP is...
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, mistake.
So 2,580 BCE is 2,580 BC.
BC, yeah.
Yeah, it's just dumb. It's freaking...
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I was mistaking that for BP.
Right. Okay. Recently, it has been confirmed that 4 of the ancient skulls unearthed at Lovelock Cave are, in fact, in the possession of the Humboldt Museum in Winnemucca, Nevada. According to Barbara Powell, who is the director of the collection, the museum is prohibited by the state of Nevada from putting the skulls on public display because the state does not recognize their legitimacy. They are instead kept at... Who gets the state gets to say this? I guess it's because it's the state. No, it's the Humboldt Museum. Well, I don't know. They are instead kept in the storage room and shown to visitors from all over the world only by request. All right, guys. Anybody who goes there, make sure you request it. They'll show them to you, I guess. In addition, Powell says that additional bones and artifacts were transferred to Phoebe A. Hearst Museum of Anthropology in Berkeley, California, where they are kept, but also never put on display. Whether the Lovelock Cave mummies are ever really existed or were deliberately covered up, we may never know. The existing artifacts do seem to substantiate the Paiute legend, and evidence of gigantism has been discovered and documented in other places across the planet. The Lovelock Cave claim seems to have all the vital pieces except for the giant mummies themselves. Were they hidden away in some warehouse so humanity wouldn't see the errors of modern history, or were they the imaginary compilation of an ancient legend and a few mysterious bones? If you want to follow the trail... Oh, yeah, he references this PDF. If you want to follow the trail and perhaps answer that question, you might begin with a PDF file of a document by Loud and Harrington entitled Lovelock Cave, published by the University of California in 1929.
I found that one.
Yeah.
I downloaded it, and it was scans of actual book pages.
Right.
So I need your OCR.
The investigators at the time did a very good job of analyzing what they could of the site. However, at that time, knowledge of native U.S. archaeology and history was not what it is today. And they had so many interesting issues competing for their attention. I only wish the site and legends could be reinvestigated today with open minds and that the original artifacts were still available. Here's this picture of the entrance of Lovelock.
Dude, that's it.
Yeah.
Come on. Brett, look it up.
Yeah, I see the spill.
Watcher.
I see the spill you're talking about.
So above that is like a circled driveway, still visible.
Yeah. Something to ponder in the meantime is provided by Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins, daughter of Paiute Chief Winnemucca, who related many stories about the Sitikat in her book, Life Among the Paiutes. My people say that the tribe we exterminated had reddish hair. I have some of their hair, which has been handed down from father to son. I have a dress, which has been in our family a great many years, trimmed with this reddish hair. I am going to wear it sometime when I lecture. It is called a mourning dress, and no one has such a dress but my family. In other words, she's not saying she personally has red hair.
Yeah.
But that she has red hair from these people, and it's woven into a very ancient dress that's been passed down in their family.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
That's weird. Here you go, honey. We burned these people alive in a cave.
I will make my women dresses from the hair of your warriors.
Yes, that's better.
You just have to put that in Conan voice, right?
Yeah.
What was that thing about the lamentation of the women or something like that he says? The best thing about something about your enemies is seeing them run before you and hearing the lamentations of their women. That's the famous Conan quote. Okay, let's see.
Man, Lovelock Cave is a huge... That's like
a
big priority on my list of sites to visit. I'm going to find that spot on Google Earth, and maybe we'll put a picture of it.
Yeah.
As a screenshot of it in the show notes. Maybe
Yeah.
with the GPS coordinates.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get some
Snake
Snake Force
Force out there.
guys to go out there and do a super secret mission.
All right.
Not that you want to dig in bat guano.
So this is probably going to be the last one I'm going to read from here. This is another
we're almost done.
Yeah, I know. We're probably going to go a little over because this story's a little long. Megalithic Catalina. The most amazing discoveries in California were eventually found on Catalina Island. In the 1920s, the islands of Catalina were owned by Wrigley Chewing Gum family, who hired Professor Ralph Glidden, curator of the Catalina Museum, to conduct a series of digs on the island under the direction of the museum. What they found made headlines around the world, only to be written out of the history books less than 10 years later. In short, Glidden and his team exhumed the remains of 3,781 skeletons of a race of blonde-haired giants. The tallest was believed to be a king who measured 9 feet 2 inches tall, and the average height of the skeletons was reported to be around 7 feet. In addition, the team found the remains of a megalithic Stonehenge temple. The selected articles below from 1928 to 1930 detail the discoveries and demonstrate the excitement about them at the time. So, this is from Ogden, Utah, November 10th, 1929. That a race of magnificent, tall Indians once roamed the Americas long before the first European sailor crossed the Atlantic has been a subject for mild, almost bantering debate among the archaeologists. None of them took the thing very seriously. It was regarded as picturesque legend. But now, amazing new discoveries have confirmed beyond question that some white men had already lived in America for centuries before Columbus landed. New finds on Catalina Island off the California coast overshadow in richness and significance most of the archaeological finds of recent years. Digging on an outlying part of the island, long the favorite location for movie directors, Professor Ralph Glidden, curator of the Catalina Museum, has uncovered overwhelming truth that a fair-skinned, tow-headed, highly intelligent race once lived in the West. Glidden's discovery of a vast cache of skeletons, urns, heads, wampum, and domestic utensils is no ordinary relic find. Not only does it reveal the existence of a white race of Indians living in Catalina at least 3,000 years ago, but it poses a tragic mystery. Professor Glidden's first startling find was a huge funeral urn carved out of stone and containing the skeleton of a young girl crouched in an upright position within, with finger bones of her little hand clenched over the inlaid brim. In a circle surrounding the urn were interred the bodies of 64 little children in tears, 4 deep, their heads placed close together. Some 5 feet below the children was the skeleton of a gigantic man, measuring 7 feet 8 inches from the top of the skull to the ankle bone. A spear blade was embedded in the ribs of the left side. So that's weird.
How do they know they were white-skinned? I mean, they're finding bones.
Yeah.
And hair. I mean, I guess they had blonde hair, but is there...
Right.
How do they know?
I don't know yet.
They don't freaking know.
They don't know. There was conclusive evidence, including the strands of hair, that all these people were blondes. At first, they were thought to be albinos. But careful examination proved that they were not, although they did possess some albino characteristics. One of the curator-chief's problems was to dry the skulls, which we found buried in damp sand near the water's edge. Great care had to be taken that they did not crumble when exposed to the air. In the daytime, he would place them in rows in front of his tent. At night, he covered them with the tarp to keep out the dampness. One evening, Philip K. Wrigley of Chicago, whose father, William Wrigley Jr., owns Catalina Island, visited the expedition's leader. Wrigley had been on a strenuous wild mountain goat hunt and stopped by to ask... He was hunting with Clint. He was hunting audads with Clint. And stopped by to ask Professor Glidden how he was getting on. Fine, replied the professor, and pulled away the tarp. The revelation was startling. 187 human skulls, staring grimly at Wrigley in the moonlight. A trail of human sacrifices leading to the temple of the sun god of the ancient Channel Island Indians was followed today by Professor Ralph Glidden, archaeologist. So this is another article from the Tyrone Daily Herald, January 6, 1930. 3 of the 4 gates of the supposed temple of Chinichinich, that bloody deity of the long ago, have been unearthed. A rich reward of relic treasures awaits the third expedition in search of the East Gate. Glidden is the curator of the Catalina Museum. At the North Temple Gate, Glidden found a large funeral urn containing the skeleton of a girl. He believes the girl may have been a princess from the riches of her ornaments, and she was a human sacrifice. Her small hands were clutching the rim of this urn. So it's weird. It's like they put her in there with her hands holding onto the edge, or she was still alive and they poisoned her or something. I don't know. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Beneath the urn lay the skeletons of 64 children, heads formed in a circle. So anyway, he just goes
Maybe
through.
it was a plague or like a...
Could be,
like,
yeah.
You just wiped him out, you know?
Yeah. Anyway, he has a whole bunch of articles. They all basically say the same thing. So I'm not going to read them all. It's this guy who was said to be... This is the guy whose stuff was found later that you were talking about.
What's his name?
Ralph Glidden.
Glidden. Yeah, that's right.
So
it was all in a box labeled with nothing but Glidden. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Ask your grandfathers. They remember
Yeah.
seeing them on display, reading the news stories, getting excited. Because, like, think about it. If I was a kid and this was like these stories were coming out in the newspaper all the time when I was a kid, like this would be something, you get into.
Yeah.
I mean, I get into it now, but I'm just saying, this is the type of stuff that,
Yeah. You travel far to see it. I mean, we went to a museum in Austin that said they had Sam Squanch. I mean, you go to see it, right?
But that was my thought. Is that ask these grand watchers.
Yeah.
See if they remember stories when they were kids or going to the museums and seeing these. You never know. They probably just forgot all about it.
The
just
watcher
like everybody
says
else.
there are genetic markers that indicate the amount of melanin present. But this is the 1930s, bro. So nobody was doing genetic stuff back then.
That's what I'm saying. Like they
were just making the assumption that because they were blonde, they were Caucasian.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So they don't really know.
But I may be wrong in saying this, but I don't know of any blonde. You don't end up with the standard Native American stock doesn't have blonde hair, ever.
Well, yeah.
Just like they don't generally have facial hair either.
Graham Hancock does a lot of research on the genetics, the genetic lines, and all that kind of stuff. That is really hard for me to understand, to follow that genetic sequencing or whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't really understand it. But there are all these strange indicators that these people came from multiple different locations in different parts of the globe to get over here a long time ago.
Yeah. One of the most interesting one is the Australasian DNA signatures. The ancient, very, very ancient Australasian DNA signatures that are found in South American natives.
Yeah. Only.
Right.
So, too bad all those skeletons vanished. Can't do modern day research on them.
Yep. I think that's a wrap, folks.
Yep.
Another giant episode.
All right. You guys can get a hold of us. Send us some emails, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com, or comment on the website, brothersoftheserpent.com.
Yep.
And don't forget to pick up your snake skins. You got to change those skins out every
Gotta shed those skins.
every 30 days.
You eat yourself a big dinner. You gotta shed that skin.
That's right. Check out the encyclopedia and the glossary.
That's right.
It's
Follow us.
useful information there on the website.
Absolutely. And follow us on Twitter at Snake Bros with no vowels, SNKBRS. I'm very active on Twitter. And don't forget to share the shows. Kyle's not active on Twitter. He is there, though. You can follow him at $50 Dynasty.
Yeah.
$50 Dynasty.
Yeah.
And you guys should do that. Try following Kyle, too. And don't forget to share the shows anywhere you can. That helps us a lot. And don't forget to donate to our pyramid scheme. Send us straight to pyramids or giants.
Send us giant
Send us
donations.
straight to Lovelock Cave. Yeah, send us giant donations. That would be great. Also, give us reviews anywhere you can. iTunes is the preferred one, but anywhere else you guys can find us where they allow reviews. You can't do it on Google Play, but you can do it on Podbean and Player FM and Stitcher and all that stuff. So,
We haven't been shadow banned yet from anywhere, we think.
yeah, it's hard to tell.
Maybe there's a bunch of reviews on iTunes that are being... maybe reviews can get shadow banned.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knows?
So far, no one in a low V has given us 2 stars, so that's great.
Still waiting.
And guys, don't forget about History Shift. He has made all of our YouTube videos.
They'll be like, yeah, episode 1 was pretty good, but the rest sucked. Like, freaking hipster.
Episode 1 was pretty good. Don't forget about History Shift. He's made all of our YouTube videos. You guys can follow him on Twitter at History Shift, and you can find him also on YouTube, History Shift. And he also has a blog where he talks about going on hikes in Montana looking for dolmens and glacial erratics. And he also wants hiking partners, people to make sure that he doesn't die or get chased by Sasquatch. So you can find him on Twitter at History Shift, and also find us on YouTube because of History Shift at Brothers of the Serpent. Just search Brothers of the Serpent on YouTube. So,
Thanks, everybody.
yep. Thanks, guys, very much.
And, oh, one more thing. I really want to...
Contact at the Cabin is sold out.
Oh, didn't know
Yep.
that. Hope to see y'all
And
there.
congrats to the people who won the drawings. That's really cool, too.
Yeah.
So,
I think that this Giants subject is not over yet.
no.
There's more, because we haven't even talked about the stone chambers in the Northeast,
Yeah, that's
which
true.
seems to be likely connected to this just because of their the nature of their alignments, astronomical alignments, and amazing stonework.
Yeah.
So
So maybe we can talk some about that on the next episode. I also
Yeah.
have a couple things some philosophy type things I want to bring up, something about ancient astronomy, and also some stuff about reincarnation.
oh, cool.
Yeah. So look forward to that, guys. I have this really cool idea about a new way to look at ancient astronomy that I want to kind of run by everybody. So
All right. Until next time.
good night, Adamu. Find some giants.